Chapter 2720. 2720 Battling He Yufeng again. 2720 Battling He Yufeng again. Everyone was surprised. Could it be that He Yufeng recognized this person? Otherwise, why would he say such a thing? Ling Han smiled lightly. He Yufeng, do you dare to battle? Pooh! Instantly, many people actually choked. How dared a mere ninth heaven celestial king challenge a pseudo-heavenly venerate? He had to have gone insane. Nong Gaolin, Wu Yuanqing, and others all shook their heads. It was no wonder that Ling Han was so arrogant just now. This brat even dared to challenge a pseudo-heavenly venerate. So what even if he had shown them such an attitude? Moreover, they were also absolutely speechless. They were thinking how to provoke Ling Han to accept a challenge, but in the end, he didn't need any provocation at all, and directly took the initiative to issue a challenge. He Yufeng snorted. Ling Han, don't think that just because you're ranked number 1 on the recent leaderboard, you can look down on a pseudo-heavenly venerate. That's because you were simply lucky. What, so he was Ling Han? Everyone was shocked. Since the update of the recent leaderboard, Ling Han's name was being talked about all the time. It was just that he was too low-key up until now, so few people had seen him or known any details regarding him. People like Lu Tianqian and the others were even more shocked. The ninth heaven celestial kings did not know. They had never been on the list themselves, so they naturally had no idea how difficult it would be to get onto the list. However, who among Lu Tianqian or the other pseudo-heavenly venerates hadn't given their all to make it to the list? It was just that by looking at the results recorded on the ring, there had always been such a long way to go for them to make it onto the list. But a ninth heaven celestial king had crushed them. Before, they were already quite upset when they had yet to meet the person, and now, thinking about Ling Han's arrogance, it naturally made them even more resentful. You were being so arrogant, and that was because of your ranking first on the recent leaderboard. Damn, you were nothing more than a mere ninth heaven celestial king. Just a lucky bastard who had gotten a bit of a head start. Did you really consider yourself as some kind of big shot? Ling Han smiled. Cut the crap, I'm asking if you dare to battle. Everyone frowned. This brat was too arrogant. How could he be so proud? Lu Tianqian was speechless. He was already a condescending person himself, but compared with Ling Han, he was still considered to be a minor case. You are no more than a ninth heaven. I won't bother to bully you. He Yufeng said dully. Are you afraid of losing? Ling Han said laughingly. He Yufeng's expression changed, revealing an angry look. To be honest, he was indeed a little worried. Back when Ling Han was at the 7th heaven, he was already capable of causing him injury. Even though the other party had gone all out to launch a powerful attack which had slightly wounded him, and the other party actually sustained more serious injuries from the recoil of the attack, now that Ling Han had advanced to the 9th heaven, how much had his strength improved? Even if the other party couldn't defeat him, if he himself couldn't easily get rid of the other party, then it would also be a big blow to his own prestige. But being so provoked by Ling Han, could he still decline to battle? How could a dignified pseudo-heavenly venerate not dare to accept the challenge of a ninth heaven celestial king? This time, the refusal was due to his disdain, but he was being challenged again. If he still didn't do something about it, he would be laughed at. Ling Han, you asked for it yourself. He Yufeng said lightly, with killing intent flowing from him. Then, come out for a battle. Ling Han said. Even the spatial god tool could hardly withstand the battle between two pseudo-heavenly venerates. It might be fine for a short period of time, but it would definitely be pierced through should the duration be longer. Ling Han took the initiative in leaving the spatial god tool, and leaped into the sky. He Yufeng followed suit. With a touch of his feet, he also leaped into the sky. After him, more and more people came out and floated up to the sky one after another to watch the battle. Of course, none of them actually believed that Ling Han could contend against a pseudo-heavenly venerate. This ought to be a one-sided violent oppression. Ling Han, your advancement is indeed astonishing. It's only been no more than 10 million years, and you have already advanced to the 9th heaven. He Yufeng's eyes shone with vitality. At that time, he had really wanted to kill Ling Han, but he had been stopped by Lin Piaoxue. This had also made him see his own shortcomings. In the past 10 million years, he was constantly fighting in bloody battles. His strength had improved by leaps and bounds. The late stage of the pseudo-heavenly venerable tier. However, you are not the only one who has made progress. He released his aura without reservations, and it reverberated like a tsunami. My strength is many times greater than before. I'll give you another head start of 9 moves. He crossed his hands behind his back. At that time, he had failed to kill Ling Han with 1 move, and had been injured by Ling Han instead. This was a knot in his heart, and now he wanted to untie this knot in his heart. This made everyone else nod in agreement. As expected of a pseudo-heavenly venerate, so impressive. Ling Han did not show any courtesy, either. He stretched his right hand forward, balling it into a fist, and as he circulated the 5 elements lightning technique, pa, 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 9-color divine lightning instantly pulsated around his fist. He Yufeng's expression involuntarily turned apprehensive. Although Ling Han's punch hadn't been thrown yet, he was already feeling the heavy pressure. The impact of this one strike was bound to be earth-shattering. Before he could finish the thought, Ling Han had already made his move, springing from his feet. Bang! His body shot forward immediately, transforming into a beam of light heading straight towards He Yufeng. That was so fast. Everyone was startled. The 9th Heaven Celestial Kings already could hardly keep up with Ling Han's speed. Even Lu Tianqian and the others were deeply shocked. They thought to themselves, had it been any one of them in the same situation, how would they deal with it? After thinking about it for a while, their faces became solemn. Perhaps they could only be on the defense. Pang! He Yufeng's strength was far greater than that of anyone here, and his reaction was astonishingly quick. He braced himself by crossing both his hands in front of his body, and blocked this strike from Ling Han. However, the power of this punch was too great, and it directly sent He Yufeng flying, and blazing lighting was rippling all over his body, making crackling noises. Pang, pang, pang. He Yufeng smashed through at least 17 cloud clusters, and when he stopped, he felt severe pain on both his hands, as if his bones were broken, and his whole body was numb. He couldn't help feeling astonished. Why was the power of this strike so terrifying? Perhaps it had reached the level of the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier. Before he could finish his thought, he only felt such a severe pain in his chest, and when he opened his mouth, he suddenly spewed out a stream of blood. Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. A single punch from a 9th Heaven Celestial King had injured a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate so seriously that he vomited blood, and this Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate was actually an elite on the recent leaderboard. This is because He Yufeng underestimated his opponent, allowing Ling Han to build up power for an ultimate move, and restricting himself by giving the other party a head start of 9 move. If He Yufeng had released an ultimate move to strike back just now, it wouldn't have been like this. But Ling Han's strength is indeed beyond expectation. Is he really just a 9th Heaven Celestial King? Some people were quite objective, and knew that it was not that He Yufeng was outmatched, but that he was just unprepared. However, this did not mean that Ling Han's freakishness could be disregarded at all. Ling Han was not in a hurry to throw a second punch, but rather smilingly said, "So how about it? Do you still want to give me a head start of 9 moves?" "Humph, how can I go back on my words?" He Yufeng insisted. "Okay." Ling Han's body shot forward quickly, and continued to throw another punch. Pang, pang, pang. Each of his strikes was domineering. It was a heavenly venerate technique, so it was naturally terrifying. Poor He Yufeng, he could only defend, and was suddenly being continuously bombarded. He kept retreating, and kept vomiting blood. When Ling Han blasted out the 6th punch, he could not bear it anymore, and fought back. Pang, a terrifying aura spread out, and he also used a heavenly venerate technique, or it would be impossible to block the attack. Now, the two were evenly matched. Boom, after the clash of attacks from both sides, the two retreated 150 kilometers away from one another. Both were gazing at each other. Ling Han just scoffed, but didn't say anything. He Yufeng's face actually turned scarlet. He said he wanted to give Ling Han a head start of 9 moves, but he couldn't help fighting back at the 6th move. This was a public embarrassment for him. However, if he hadn't fought back with all his strength, he might have been seriously injured before he could have reached the 9th move. Chapter 27-21. 2721 Defeat. 2721 Defeat. Who could have expected such a result? For a pseudo-heavenly venerate to say that he would allow a celestial king the first 9 moves, anyone would think this was a natural course of events. To speak nothing of 9 moves, even 900 would not be anything strange. Yet what was the result? This was only the 6th move, and the pseudo-heavenly venerate had no choice but to break the agreement and move to counter. How could there be such a powerful celestial king? Come on, I have no interest in taking advantage of you, Ling Han stated evenly, crooking a finger at He Yufeng. Since He Yufeng had already moved, he would naturally not continue to be reserved. What was the point of continuing the act? Ling Han, I have underestimated you, he said in a dark tone. Ling Han shook his head. What I want to hear is not these words. What do you want to hear? He Yufeng asked. You owe me an apology, Ling Han stated seriously. Previously, He Yufeng had used his superior position as a pseudo-heavenly venerate, as well as the fact that he had an old man that was a 4th-tier heavenly venerate, to just break the rules of the martial academy without concern, demanding that Ling Han submit and become his servant. He even wanted to kill the latter. This was unjust, and what Ling Han despised the most was injustice. Thus, he wanted to demand an explanation for this. A puny 9th heaven. He Yufeng's face was filled with disgust. Even if Ling Han had already proven his strength, he still thought that there was no way that Ling Han could be his equal. This was the pride of a pseudo-heavenly venerate. I will have to beat you into submission then. Pang! Ling Han bounced and charged forwards with force, rushing towards He Yufeng. There was naturally no way He Yufeng would be afraid. He clashed directly with Ling Han. 2 forces at the pseudo-heavenly venerable tier clashed intensely. Both of them had a determination that would not allow them to lose, and both of them went all out. All their moves held nothing back, clashing with blood-boiling intensity. In terms of battle prowess, there was not much difference between the two. They were both at the late-stage pseudo-heavenly venerable tier, but Ling Han's physique was extremely tough and comparable to divine metal. Even if he did not fight back, it was still extremely difficult for He Yufeng to use brute force to penetrate his defense, and with Ling Han's recovery ability added into the equation, it was possible that he could not even wound Ling Han. Hence, the longer their battle progressed, the more disadvantageous it was for He Yufeng. Ling Han was completely unafraid of trading injury for injury, but He Yufeng was filled with wariness. He did not dare to forcefully clash with Ling Han like this, and this meant that he began to have reservations in the battle. Pang! Long-term defense would ultimately lead to defeat, and He Yufeng finally sustained a punch from Ling Han. Suddenly, he stumbled backwards, and his face flushed red before he spat out a mouthful of blood. But he did not have the time to catch his breath at all before Ling Han's attack was heading his way again. He had no choice but to parry. Pang! Several dozen moves later, He Yufeng sustained another punch. Fortunately, whether it was him or Ling Han, they could not possibly channel the heavenly venerate technique all the time. Thus, this punch had not been delivered with the 9 transformations divine scroll or the 5 elements lightning technique. Pang pang pang. He Yufeng was continuously hit, and he was also continuously throwing up blood. He Yufeng, do you remember that I have said this? That even the wrath of an ordinary man can still cause blood to splash 3 feet? Ling Han asked. Now I have another saying to bestow on you. Tides will turn and power will also shift hands, so do not bully a youth when he is weak. He Yufeng shouted in extreme fury. To be taught a lesson by a puny 9th heaven celestial king. How could he bear such humiliation? A mere brat, you have gone too far. He roared furiously, trying his best to counterattack, yet had completely no power to turn this situation around. Faced with Ling Han, who possessed a physique of divine metal and battle prowess of the pseudo-heavenly venerable tier, it was useless no matter how hard he tried. Lower your head and admit your mistake, and I would not think any less of you, Ling Han said. In your dreams, He Yufeng said through gritted teeth. He would rather die than submit. Then I will just have to beat you into submission. Ling Han delivered a mad barrage of punches, holding no mercy for his opponent at all. Crack! He Yufeng's bones were broken forcefully, but he was very headstrong, and did not even groan. But so what? Would this cause Ling Han to have any mercy? Finally, He Yufeng could not help but grunt in pain. The injuries he had sustained were really too heavy. Enough! Nong Gaolin rushed into the skies. He definitely could not allow Ling Han to defeat He Yufeng. This was not just He Yufeng's defeat, but would also humiliate the whole circle of Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tiers. For a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate to be outmatched by a ninth heaven, what kind of joke was that? Sure then, all of you come together. Ling Han laughed loudly, holding absolutely no fear. His physique was too tough. Even if he had to fight two people alone, he would not be disadvantaged at all. His target was very clear, and that was to just attack He Yufeng. As for Nong Gao Lin, he ignored him completely, and allowed the former to attack him as he liked. Everyone couldn't help but feel numb. Two great Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates were still unable to stop Ling Han. Heavens, what kind of monster was this? Wu Yuanqing hesitated for a moment, and then charged towards Ling Han as well, stopping Ling Han from perpetuating his crime. But it was still useless. Ling Han's physique was already tough enough to allow him to have no fear of the attacks of Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates. The attacks they delivered could only leave behind grooves on Ling Han's body, but before they could pursue their advantage, these grooves would rapidly recover. Was he even a human? This was practically a monster. Lu Tianqian also joined the ranks of battle, and there were even more Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates. They were already deeply involved in this. If so many Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates were still unable to stop Ling Han, how would they be able to raise their heads high in the future after this? We attacked together. The remaining Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates also moved as well. It could not be denied that the combined force of over 20 Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates was really too strong. Even if they still could not wound Ling Han, it was an easy feat for them to stop him. As long as each of them delivered a single punch, that would form a terrifying amount of power, and forcefully strike Ling Han backwards. He Yufeng finally broke free of this dangerous situation. Ling Han stood still, and did not make another move. It was actually very simple for him to break this stalemate. He only had to draw the Divine Demon Sword. With the Heavenly Venerate tool in hand, he could conquer anyone. These Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates could only flee in various directions. But once the Divine Demon Sword was drawn, that would result in either death or severe injury, and this would no longer be something as simple as a spar. At the moment, Ling Han only wanted to teach He Yufeng a lesson. He had no plans to throw himself into it too. He Yufeng. Ling Han stood in the air, looking down. Do you feel any regret now? For those who use their superior position to bully others, there would come a day when they would also be bullied. Do you yield? He Yufeng gritted his teeth. He naturally did not want to yield, but since he was outmatched, what was the point of speaking tough? Previously, though Ling Han had lost to him, the former was only a 7th Heaven Celestial King. Though he had lost, it was an honorable defeat. But now, Ling Han was only a 9th Heaven Celestial King, yet had used his genuine strength to defeat He Yufeng. What else could the latter say? Now, even speaking one more word would only make him even more humiliated. Ling Han laughed loudly, descended, and said, "Wife, let's go." The Empress nodded, and left hand in hand with Ling Han. Yet everyone was still in a state of shock. A 9th Heaven Celestial King had actually pointed a finger at the nose of a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate and lectured him face to face. This was something unprecedented. How could a 9th Heaven Celestial King possibly be so strong? This was something that everyone could understand even less. That's right. This is strength beyond description. It is completely impossible. Everyone shook their head. How could there possibly be such a strong 9th Heaven Celestial King in this world? Yet someone sighed slowly and said, "It is possible, but this kind of prodigy is much, much too rare." How could that be? Everyone was in disbelief. That person countered, "Could it be that you guys have forgotten Lin Yulian and Xian Qihu? These lord and lady." Everyone inhaled sharply. Lin Yulian and Xian Qihi were both absolute legends. They could be ranked in the general leaderboard, and had used such little time to accomplish this. This naturally was a miracle that would have praises sung about it for generations. Furthermore, the battle merits of these two people had been produced through real battle. There was not the slightest exaggeration involved at all. Chapter 2722. 2722 Pursuing Heavenborn. 2722 Pursuing Heavenborn. You guys only know how strong Lady Lin and Lord Xian are, but do you know why they are so strong? the person from before asked calmly. His name was Zhao Fukong, and he was also a pseudo-heavenly venerate. The Grand Elder of the Zhao clan was only a second-tier heavenly venerate, yet was known as one who knows all. He had a great understanding of other heavenly venerates. It was mostly because he was a gossip. Please explain, Brother Zhao, Lu Tianqian and the others all asked. Zhao Fukong nodded. Everyone knows that one would have to draw that unique power of heaven and earth to advance into the pseudo-heavenly venerable tier, and use this power to temper himself, and the moment you can use this power, that means that you have set foot into the first tier of the heavenly venerable tier. This was something that everyone knew, so everyone naturally did not show much of a change in expression as they continued listening to him. However, there are some people whose natural talent is extraordinary. At peak stage 9th heaven, or even earlier than that, they are able to draw the fundamental power of the Genesis world and temper their physique in advance. What? Shock waves instantly spread through the whole crowd as everyone's eyes immediately grew wide. They were in a state of absolute disbelief. Wasn't this a joke? The path of cultivation was a process of gradual progress, just like how a celestial king would have to cultivate advancing from one heaven to the next. It was impossible that one could directly leap from the first heaven to fifth heaven in a single stroke. Hence, just how could being able to use the fundamental power of the Genesis world to temper one's physique before the 9th heaven, or even before reaching the celestial king tier be believed? Furthermore, these were the 6 great fundamental powers. That was something that even a first-tier heavenly venerate could not possibly sense. If they could sense it, they would have become a second-tier heavenly venerate. This was a mere fantasy, an absolute joke. Zhao Fukong only smiled, and did not take everyone's reaction to heart at all. He continued, with some coincidental chance, added with one's own freakish talent, it is indeed possible. Just think, using the fundamental power to temper his physique, just how strong would his power have to be? Though Ling Han is only at the 9th heaven, in essence, he is actually a pseudo-heavenly venerate. Furthermore, he is tempered by the fundamental power of the Genesis world, so his strength is even stronger than that of other pseudo-heavenly venerates that are on the same level. Unless you, too, could take this step by using the fundamental power of the Genesis world. When these words fell, a dead silence fell over the whole area. How were they supposed to defeat this kind of freak? However, there is no need for you guys to feel dejected either. Zhao Fukong's words took a different turn. Though Ling Han is presently very aggressive, and he can in fact still be supreme over the rest of the world even after becoming a first-tier heavenly venerate, there would no longer be any difference between him and other heavenly venerates of the same tier after advancing to become a second-tier heavenly venerate. At that time, everyone would have grasped one of the fundamental powers of the Genesis world, as well as that unique power of the realm, so there would naturally be no difference among them. Everyone nodded, but very quickly shook their heads again. Becoming a second-tier heavenly venerate? That was easier said than done. The majority of people here might not even be able to reach the pseudo-heavenly venerable tier, and if they did, it would be no issue for them to advance to become first-tier heavenly venerates, but to reach the second tier? If they were lucky, 1 out of every 10 people here could succeed. In other words, there were at least 90% of them that would be eternally crushed by Ling Han, and there was no hope for them to ever catch up to or surpass Ling Han. Just the thought of it was dispiriting. Sigh. Someone sighed. Sigh. Even more people were sighing. Ling Han's name once again rang loudly through the entire barrier after this battle. Previously, he had indeed become well known, but everyone had thought that was because his luck was especially good, and that was why he had managed to kill over 10,000 pseudo-heavenly venerates, and made his way into the general leaderboard in a single stroke. But now, he had battled Lu Tianqian and over 20 other pseudo-heavenly venerates all by himself, fighting to the point that He Yufeng did not dare to accept his challenge. Just how strong and domineering was that? How many pseudo-heavenly venerates would be able to accomplish the same feat? And when the news that Ling Han was only a 9th heaven celestial king spread out, everyone was even more stunned. Yet a number of them also scoffed in response. Wasn't that a joke? This had to be a huge joke. It had to have been done by someone who was deliberately trying to push Ling Han onto a high pedestal. Another example was the matter of the rankings previously. Anyone with eyes could tell that this was the case with a single glance. Yet Ling Han was completely unconcerned about this. All he had wanted was to vent the anger accumulated on the last occasion. He Yufeng had also wanted to kill him at the time, but Ling Han would leave this debt for collection at a later time. Whoever owed him, he ultimately would collect on their debts. Little Han, we can move now. The large black dog suddenly came over. Ling Han raised a brow. Heavenborn left the city? The large black dog nodded strongly. This day has finally come. Previously, he kept monitoring Heavenborn, and the moment the latter left the city, he came to find Ling Han. Let's go. Ling Han nodded. The man and dog left the city, and did not take the Empress or invite the Rain Emperor. It was fine for the two of them to do this. This was not something that was appropriate to be widely known. The large black dog was an expert in tracking. His head was lowered all the time along the way, his behind raised high, and he was occasionally sniffing here and there before they continued their journey. Over 20 days later, they arrived in a canyon, and could hear sounds of battle coming from within. They walked closer, and saw that Heavenborn was presently fighting with a snowman monster. This snowman monster was several hundred meters high, and possessed Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier battle prowess, and though Heavenborn had already advanced to the 9th heaven, his battle prowess had not reached the height of Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier yet, or rather, he was just a little bit away from that height. But even if he was suppressed in terms of battle prowess, this was still not a one-sided battle. This naturally was due to his physique. Even if he sustained a heavy blow, or even if a large hole had been pierced open in his gut, he would be able to immediately recover. This was much too exhausting. If the battle continued on in this manner, there would eventually come a day when this snowman monster would die of exhaustion. But a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate was still a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate. Without 8 to 10 years, this was not even thinkable. Ling Han naturally had no interest in waiting for so many years, and was just about to stand up and join the battle, but as he watched, Heavenborn's body suddenly spread out, becoming over 900 meters tall. Then, it was as if Heavenborn turned into a piece of cloth as he wrapped around the giant snow monster. Seeing this scene, Ling Han couldn't help but stop and continue watching. This cloth that Heavenborn had transformed into was astonishingly huge. When one had reached a cultivation level like theirs, size was actually not the key factor here. Transformation was only the matter of a single thought for them. Thus, this cloth that he had transformed into was also extraordinarily huge, wrapping around the giant snow monster in a single stroke. The giant snow monster struggled strongly, but the toughness of divine metal added with Heavenborn's own power securely bound this giant snow monster. This cloth very quickly wrapped tightly around the giant snow monster. Then, in a flash, Heavenborn regained his original appearance, but his stomach was now large and rounded. This was equivalent to having devoured this giant snow monster. This was astonishing. A 9th heaven celestial king had actually swallowed a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate by force. Tong! Suddenly, one spot on Heavenborn's lower abdomen stuck out. That was the strong counterattack of the giant snow monster he had swallowed. It wanted to charge out of him, but the skin of his stomach was extremely tough, and the giant snow monster was unable to blast out of his stomach. Heavenborn grunted, and wisps of black chi exuded from him. From the look of things, it was a little like those celestial kings that had been infected by Hysteria's spiritual power, yet it was clear that he was self-aware. Wang wang wang. One after another, seals appeared on his body. They surpassed regulations, and were extremely profound and mysterious. This monster is quite strong. I will need at least 10,000 years to digest it, Heavenborn mumbled. However, if I get a few more, I will be able to become a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate. I am very sorry to inform you that you will no longer have that chance, Ling Han said calmly. Heavenborn immediately turned around, and demanded who? At present, he was several hundred meters tall, so this shout was also extremely loud and resounding. Chapter 27-23. 27-23 Past. Present. 27-23 Past. Present. It's your grandpa dog. The large black dog immediately darted out, barking. Kill yourself quickly so that the karmic life Heavenly Venerable can appear. Otherwise, Grandpa Dog will destroy you. Heavenborn crossed his hands behind his back. Even when I just came to being, I had no fear of you. What more now? Where is Ling Han? Come out. He knew that the voice just now had not come from the large black dog. Ling Han smiled slightly, and appeared on the mountain. At present, Heavenborn was massive. Even if he was standing in the canyon, he was not much lower than him. He looked at Ling Han coldly. In the past, the fact that I did not kill you was indeed my greatest miscalculation. Ling Han shook his head. A lot of people have said these words to me before, but their greatest miscalculation should have been meeting me in the first place. What arrogant words! Heavenborn exclaimed. This is confidence. Ling Han was still calm. In the past, even when he had worked together with Ji Wuming, Hua Ferong, and the others, they had still been no match for Hua Ferong, but now he had already caught up to Heavenborn in terms of cultivation level, and did not have any disadvantage any longer. Not being able to devour your bloodline in the past is a great regret of mine. I did not expect that you would deliver yourself into my hands. Very good. Heavenborn nodded, filled with confidence. Are you done with the nonsense? Give us back the comic life, Heavenly Venerable. The large black dog was the first to make his move. Heavenborn humphed, delivering a palm strike in response. Pang! The two great ninth heaven elites exchanged blows once, suddenly causing a great reverberation. However, though the man and dog had both been sent several hundred kilometers backwards, each of them looked like nothing had happened. Your physique! Heavenborn was surprised, and with a thought, he exclaimed, You have cultivated the indestructible divine metal physique. He possessed a sliver of the divine sense of the karmic life Heavenly Venerable, so he naturally knew of the existence of the indestructible heaven scroll. The large black dog was proud. It is not just a bastard like you that can possess a divine metal-like physique. Heavenborn frowned slightly, but his frown immediately smoothened out. Even so, you will only be refined by me. He moved again, grabbing out at the large black dog. However, the large black dog had long since attained peak stage 9th heaven celestial king tier, and had also learned various theories with Wally, so he was really just a step away from setting foot in the pseudo-heavenly venerable tier. His battle prowess was extraordinary, especially when his physique had reached the level of divine metal, which naturally made him even more fearless. Similarly, Heavenborn had always possessed divine metal level defense. Though the two of them were fighting extremely intensely, it was a stalemate, with neither being able to wound the other. It was only excitement for show. Battle, battle, battle. They battled till the world became dark, but there was still no conclusion. Wang. However, Heavenborn's stomach was trembling wildly. There was a pseudo-heavenly venerate imprisoned there. It had great strength, and was capable of dealing impressive damage even to divine metal. It was fine if this was under normal conditions, as Heavenborn's own power would be enough to suppress it, but now he had to exchange blows with a peak stage 9th heaven elite. With enemy on the inside, and an enemy on the outside, this made it slightly unbearable for him. His stomach split open quite a few times, ripped open by a claw. That giant snow monster very nearly managed to escape, and Heavenborn forcefully suppressed it. However, he was beginning to tire slightly. Heavenborn looked towards Ling Han. This man had not made his move yet. If he combined forces with the large black dog, there was absolutely no way Heavenborn could digest the thing in his stomach. That would need a very peaceful environment. Heavenborn thus decided to just spread out his body, and turned once more into a metallic sheet, vomiting the object in his stomach. The giant snow monster instantly escaped, shrieking loudly. Heavenborn transformed his body, and returned to his usual size. This could cut down on the surface area on his body that would be exposed to attacks. Otherwise, it would be very disadvantageous in battle. Pang! The giant snow monster stomped down on Heavenborn. However, its foot was too big, so even the large black dog was within the range of this attack. You ugly giant, why are you stomping down on me as well? The large black dog dodged hurriedly. Though his physique was akin to divine metal, and he would definitely survive this stomp, he would still be stomped flat. That was still very painful. The giant snow monster ignored him completely, and just continued stomping, treating Heavenborn and the large black dog the same. They belonged to two different worlds in the first place. With the inclusion of the giant snow monster, this battle became even more complicated. This was a battle royale of 3 different sides, and was extremely lively. Ling Han unleashed a battle cry, and charged towards that giant snow monster. Pang pang pang. He threw a series of punches, every blow incredibly domineering. This giant snow monster's power was impressive, but its defense was far from reaching the level of the divine metal. Under Ling Han's mad barrage of attacks, One of its legs was soon forcefully blasted apart. Pang! Its figure suddenly swayed as it collapsed. Ling Han gave it another beating. Pah! The giant snow monster's head was also destroyed, and it was now completely dead. Clean and quick. Heavenborn's expression instantly changed drastically. This battle prowess was too powerful, wasn't it? This completely exceeded his expectations. They were both ninth heaven celestial kings, and Heavenborn was a manifestation of the willpower of the heaven and earth at that, but he was actually inferior to Ling Han. I am feeling more and more regretful, Heavenborn said. At the time, even if you had been spirited away by the chaotic stream of spatial energy, I should have continued to pursue and kill you completely. At the time, he had also been affected by the chaotic stream of spatial energy, but if he had been willing to sustain some injury and expend a little life force, he would still have been able to catch up to Ling Han. However, Heavenborn had thought that it would not have been worth it at the time, and that was why he had allowed the chaotic stream of spatial energy to spirit Ling Han away. As Heavenborn thought about it, there should have been no way for Ling Han to survive. He had not expected that not only had the latter not died, he was presently strong enough to surpass him. Ling Han smiled slightly. Now, both of us are at the ninth heaven. Come then, let us have a fair fight, and see who is stronger between the two of us. Heavenborn sneered. I admit that you are very freakish, but you will never be able to compare with heaven and earth. He suddenly opened his mouth, which became incredibly colossal, as he tried to swallow Ling Han. Ling Han had seen this move before. The Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier giant snow monster was thus swallowed whole, and it was indeed very powerful. In this instant, he did not want to take this attack head-on, so he dodged. Oh, so what if you are a manifestation of the realm? You can guess. Heavenborn did not answer, and merely continued to bite at Ling Han. Thoughts were turning over in Ling Han's head, and he said seriously, realms can devour one another to improve their own respective levels. Going by that account, it is possible that you, too, possess this kind of ability. Heavenborn couldn't help but be rendered speechless. He had not thought that Ling Han would really hit the nail on the head. You had just eaten a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate just now, and I assumed that you had wanted to digest it, but because of our interference, you had no choice but to stop the process. Ling Han continued his deduction following this line of thought. Could it be that there would be a day that you could become a second Hysteria? This was not an idea that belonged only to Heavenborn. It was the same for He Feng. He had also obtained one of Hysteria's tentacles, and had spent several epochs to study it so that he could be assimilated with Hysteria, and also gain the devouring ability. Thus, it was very easy for Ling Han to come up with this deduction. However, Heavenborn did not know this. His eyes were wide and mouth gaping. In his eyes, this was a great secret that only he knew. He had not thought that Ling Han would have guessed it so easily, and at this moment, he did not know how to react at all. This was just like how someone managed to dig out a precious gem with great difficulty, and was about to show off his feat to his companion, but in the end discovered that the path in his companion's home was completely laid out with these gems. That sudden sense of loss and dejection was really over the moon. Heavenborn took a deep breath, and only then did he manage to suppress his emotions. He shouted, "So what if you know that? Once I eat you, you will only become my nutrition. Is that right?" Ling Han chuckled, and drew the divine demon's sword. You can try. Chapter 27-24. 27-24 Beating to Heart's Content. 27-24 Beating to Heart's Content. Heavenborn couldn't help but pause. He was the manifestation of the willpower of heaven and earth, so his senses far surpassed his cultivation level. With a single glance, he could tell what was up with the divine demon's sword. This was a heavenly venerate tool. His physique was indeed tough, and even a pseudo-heavenly venerate's blow would only leave behind a groove on his skin. However, if he was struck by a heavenly venerate tool, he definitely would be sliced open. Heavenborn couldn't help but thank his luck secretly. If he really had swallowed Ling Han into his stomach just now, he would probably have been ripped open and dissected by now. His recovery ability was indeed powerful, but the destructive power of a heavenly venerate tool was astonishing. It was unknown how much time he would need to heal his injuries. Your luck is also overwhelmingly good. Heavenly venerate growled through gritted teeth. Even if he was the manifestation of the heaven and earth, He had not been able to obtain a piece of devouring metal himself. Though the Black Tower was also a heavenly venerate tool, it had not been forged by his own hands. Furthermore, it was still seriously damaged at present. It could not unleash the battle prowess that it should have at all. Hence, you had best accept your death obediently. Ling Han charged over. Do you think I fear you? Heavenborn took out the Black Tower. Wang. It immediately enlarged in his hand, turning into a staff-like form, which he wielded as he charged towards Ling Han. Boom! Two heavenly venerate tools clashed, instantly bursting with a light so dazzling that even the heaven and earth paled in comparison. With a strong flick of Ling Han's sword, Pang, Heavenborn was sent flying. The divine demon sword had only advanced to the heavenly venerable tier in terms of material, but the martial intent of a heavenly venerate had not been branded on it yet. Thus, it was extremely sharp and incredibly sturdy, but aside from these 2 points, it actually could only still be considered a celestial tool. As for the Black Tower, it was indeed a genuine heavenly venerate tool, but it was severely damaged at the moment, and was not able to awaken fully at all. This heavenly venerate tool that was not awakened was actually just considerably sharper than a celestial tool, and considerably sturdier. In terms of battle prowess, it was actually inferior. Hence, in the clash between the divine demon sword and the Black Tower, it was actually 2 pieces of devouring metal crashing into each other. Naturally, neither would be able to get the upper hand. The factor that decided the outcome of this clash would still be Ling Han's and Heavenborn's own battle prowess. Of course, it was certain that Ling Han was definitely stronger. Pang! Ling Han shot off in pursuit, and followed up with another punch, which landed on Heavenborn's nose. Even if Heavenborn's physique was tough, so what? This punch still broke his nose, and caused him to shed golden blood. Ling Han used this opening, and struck out with the sword, stabbing at Heavenborn's heart. Ding! Heavenborn laid out the Black Tower horizontally so that it acted as a shield in front of his chest. This strike was blocked, but as the massive power surged past, Heavenborn was again sent flying. He was involuntarily shocked. His power was much greater than the ordinary 9th Heaven Celestial Kings because he had also previously been able to draw on the power of heaven and earth to temper himself. But this could only be done in the celestial realm. After he had come to the Flaming Frost realm, he, a manifestation of the heaven and earth, had naturally fallen out of favor. That was the case even for him, so how was it that Ling Han could be even more powerful than that? Heavenborn was the manifestation of the dimension of the celestial realm. Why was it that it was he that would be inferior to this bug that had been born in this dimension? Pang! Heavenborn suffered another punch, and stumbled back from the impact. His face was covered with golden blood, and looked extremely tragic. This was Ling Han's power being too strong, surpassing Heavenborn's recovery ability. However, this could only cause him some slight injury. The body of divine metal was not so easy to destroy. Ling Han, you can do nothing to me. Heavenborn roared. Even if you are slightly superior to me, so what? I am the manifestation of the dimension, and possess a boundless room for evolution. My path of cultivation only requires me to devour elites. There is no need for comprehension at all. I will very soon surpass you, and at that time, I will crush you into dust. Ling Han scoffed. If you really had been so amazing, how could I have possibly caught up to you in cultivation level and suppressed you in battle prowess? Heavenborn was instantly rendered speechless. In the past, his cultivation level and battle prowess had both overwhelmed Ling Han, yet he no longer had the slightest bit of advantage now. Just think back to the past. How high-spirited he had been, snatching the heavenly venerate tool from Ling Han's hands, and beating down on him so badly that the latter could only flee in a panic. If it were not for the uniqueness of that spatial passageway, Ling Han would have long since died hundreds of millions of years ago. Damn it, damn it! Heavenborn shouted furiously in his mind, but time could not be reversed. To say nothing of the fact that he was only a manifestation of heaven and earth, even if he was the heaven and earth itself, this was something that he could not do. Ling Han used the 9 transformations divine scroll, and his battle prowess suddenly soared countless times over. Chasing after Heavenborn, he blasted him madly. Pang, pang, pang. After several dozen punches, Heavenborn's whole chest had caved in. It was as thin as paper and almost close to being shattered. The large black dog could not help but remind, Little Han, take it easy. This body still has to be used by the heavenly venerate. Heavenborn naturally heard these words, and his face instantly scrunched up with anger. You guys actually want to use my body? Don't even think about it. Heavenborn fought back strongly, using the black tower like a staff. Boom! The Heavenly Venerate tool unleashed its might. Even if it only possessed the might of the devouring metal itself, that was still terrifying enough as it broke through the layers of space. But faced with Ling Han, this move was not effective. It couldn't be helped, for Ling Han possessed the divine demon sword. Boom! The two of them exchanged blows intensely. Ling Han, who possessed battle prowess on the level of late-stage Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier, completely suppressed Heavenborn, beating him so hard that the latter was beginning to doubt himself. Why was he, a manifestation of heaven and earth, actually no match for Ling Han? Heavenborn was filled with hatred. If he had known this, he would not have come to the Flaming Frost Realm at all. If this was the Celestial Realm, he could influence the heaven and earth to a limited extent. The various natural treasures would just appear on their own in front of him, helping his cultivation level to soar. However, the overall level of the Celestial Realm was too low, and it would target even just a first-tier Heavenly Venerate. Even he could not be exempted from this, because once he was separated from the heaven and earth, he was actually an independent individual. It was precisely because of such considerations that Heavenborn had come to the Flaming Frost Realm so he could seek a wider space for his own growth. He had not thought that he would encounter a freak like Ling Han here. He gritted his teeth and decided to retreat. If they continued fighting like this, he really would be done for. You can't escape, Ling Han declared coldly. He had already targeted Heavenborn for so long, so how could he miss this chance? Pang pang pang. Ling Han shot out like an arrow in pursuit, and he forced Heavenborn backwards once more with a series of more than a dozen punches. If you kill me, you will not be able to escape punishment, either. Heavenborn roared harshly. At the very least, he was wearing the ring which had a recording ability. If he died by Ling Han's hand, those at the barrier would definitely know about it. This crime was much greater than killing fellow disciples at the Martial Academy. It was a definite death sentence. Even if you were the son of a 7th-tier Heavenly Venerate, it would be useless. Ling Han shook his head and asked smilingly, "Who said I would be killing you?" Heavenborn was slightly taken aback. Thinking back to the large black dog's previous words, he naturally came to a realization. The two of you want to bring the karmic life Heavenly Venerable back to life, and have him replace me in this body that I am presently occupying? Ha ha ha, that is delusional. If I die, I will definitely eradicate his lingering soul before my death. Ling Han humphed. Will you be able to? He attacked aggressively, every strike of his sword harsh and powerful, no longer keeping anything back. Heavenborn instantly felt the pressure on him increase greatly. Once Ling Han unleashed his might, he would not be able to hold up at all. After all, the gap in strength between the two of them was too wide. This was a one-sided oppression, a one-sided torment. Pang pang pang. Heavenborn was beaten tragically. When they had had a fair battle in the 9 Deaths formation, Heavenborn had already been no match for Ling Han, and now the gap between the two of them was even wider than before. After around 100 moves, Ling Han kicked Heavenborn over, and leveled the divine demon's sword at the latter's neck. If it were not for the fact that he could not truly kill this guy, what need would there have been for Ling Han to use so many moves? Of course, beating Heavenborn to his heart's content was also another reason. Chapter 2725. 2725 Resurrection of Yuan Sheng. 2725 Resurrection of Yuan Sheng. Kill, stab me with the sword if you can. Heavenborn laughed loudly. Don't forget, Yuan Sheng and I share this body. If I die, it means he will be dead too. The large black dog jumped over and paced around in circles anxiously. Little Han, what should we do now? Ling Han smiled lightly. If we truly can't save karmic life Heavenly Venerable, then we'll just have to erase this person. Heavenborn was a personification of the realm, so his way of thinking would definitely be different from normal people's. If he was allowed to continue getting stronger, he definitely wouldn't fight against hysteria. Rather, he would want to be the second hysteria, or perhaps he might want to eliminate hysteria and dominate the Genesis world. Killing another person was actually quite simple. One just needed to remove your own and the other party's rings before the actual deed. Hearing the indifference in Ling Han's voice, Heavenborn couldn't help but feel a shiver run down his spine. Ling Han really wanted to kill him. It was no empty threat. What to do now? He didn't want to die. Don't you all want to save Yuan Sheng? He shouted. He was clutching at straws to save himself. The large black dog was also pacing up and down. In spite of the fact that Heavenborn was now captured, the question of how to save karmic life Heavenly Venerable had become a big problem. Ling Han smiled, and with a hook of his foot, the black tower fell into his hands. He couldn't help feeling rueful. After more than 100 million years, the black tower finally returned to him. Okay, I'll let you have this Heavenly Venerate tool as a gift. Heavenborn said. I can erase the martial intent on it, and it shall no longer have any relationship to me. How about it? A Heavenly Venerate tool in exchange for my life Yuri gaining a huge profit from this trade. He was also capable of being flexible. In his opinion, as long as he was being given time to grow stronger, his future achievements would not be lower than those of Hysteria. All the elites in the world would just become nutrition for him. A smile spread across Ling Han's face. All of a sudden, he picked up the black tower and smashed it against Heavenborn, directly targeting the head. With a clang, Heavenborn was dazed from the impact. What kind of power did Ling Han possess? Had he used all his strength in this strike, with the destructive power of the Heavenly Venerate tool, Heavenborn's head would have already become pulp. However, Ling Han didn't intend to kill Heavenborn, so he controlled his power in this strike, only causing Heavenborn damage. It was like hitting an ordinary person with a wooden stick. If you exerted too much force you could kill them, but if you controlled the force, you would knock people unconscious or cause dizziness or physical injury. The degree of force which Ling Han used was the second type. He knocked Heavenborn dizzy and caused him injury. Under such a blow, Heavenborn couldn't control himself at all, so how could he destroy the soul of karmic life Heavenly Venerable? Moreover, the Black Tower was personally forged by karmic life Heavenly Venerable. Such a blow would cause injury to Heavenborn, but it would have absolutely no effect on the soul of karmic life Heavenly Venerable. Slowly obliterating the soul of Heavenborn in this way, all that remained could only be the lingering soul of karmic life Heavenly Venerable. Even if it was just a tiny little bit, and would be extremely weak when resurrected, he would eventually recover as long as there was enough time. The large black dog obviously thought of the same thing as well, and couldn't help clapping with his paws. Ingenious, ingenious. It was impossible to implement such a tactic before, as Ling Han's strength had fallen short when compared to that of Heavenborn, but now that he had surpassed him in battle prowess, this method became feasible and effective. Crack, crack, crack. One blow after another. Although Heavenborn knew this wasn't right, how could he control his body? It was like someone was beating drums and gongs right next to the ear of an ordinary person, causing them to feel dizzy, lightheaded, and unable to think at all. Ah! Heavenborn could only utter such an angry roar, but it immediately came to an abrupt stop. Clang! Only such melodious sound of the blows continued on endlessly. So what if he had the physique of divine metal? He could only tremble under the impact of being struck by the Heavenly Venerate tool. However, Heavenborn indeed was able to hold on for quite some time. 10 days, 1 month, and half a year had passed, yet he was still struggling and didn't crumble. Ling Han naturally did not lack patience. To say nothing of half a year, he could spend 1,000 or even 10 million years like this. He owed his life twice to karmic life Heavenly Venerable, so how could he not even have such patience? 3 years, 5 years, 10 years later, Heavenborn really couldn't endure it any longer. Under the continuous impact of the strikes with the Black Tower, his body was already covered with cracks, and he bled profusely with golden blood. This was due to Ling Han already holding back his strength. Otherwise just being hit once with the Black Tower might have already caused Heavenborn's body to fall apart. Heavenborn cursed as his body glowed with black lithe wanted to go all out and fight to the death. It was not for the sake of taking Ling Han down together with him, but to completely erase the lingering soul of the karmic life Heavenly Venerable. Still trying to do evil? Ling Han smiled. Clang! He struck hard with the Black Tower again. Heavenborn's body trembled violently, and then his limbs drooped, as if he was dead. Crack! 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 Ling Han hit a few more times, but Heavenborn did not have any reaction, only that his body would tremble for a moment after he had struck him. Have you beaten him to death? The large black dog came up to him. Ling Han nodded. The soul of Heavenborn should have died, but whether karmic life Heavenly Venerable can come back to life will depend on his good fortune. It would mainly depend on the strength of the lingering soul. If it was too weak, then it would just be like a worn candle in the wind, and would soon be extinguished. This would require karmic life Heavenly Venerable himself to have a strong will to survive. He had long since died, after all. Logically, it was impossible for him to come back to life. Oh, Heavenly Venerate, you are an absolutely strong man. Back then, you fought against 11 Heavenly Venerates of the foreign realm all by yourself. You can definitely overcome this little difficulty, the large black dog murmured, cheering for the karmic life Heavenly Venerable. Oh, Heavenly Venerate, you are an extraordinary genius through the ages. Presently, hysteria is on a rampage. We are still waiting for you to resolve the matter. You must come back alive. Now all that Ling Han and the large black dog could do was wait. 10 years, 100 years and 1,000 years had passed. The only thing that made them feel relieved was that Heavenborn's body was slowly recovering. The lacerations that were originally caused by being hit with Black Tower were slowly healing. This might be a wishful desire, but it might also be that Heavenborn's physique was indeed so tough, having such an ability even after death. 3,000 years later, Heavenborn's fingers suddenly twitched slightly. The large black dog instantly felt surprised and happy, but also extremely worried. This might be karmic life Heavenly Venerable coming back to life, but it was also possible that Heavenborn hadn't died at all, and then they would have rejoiced too soon. Ling Han also looked over. All these years, he hadn't wasted time either, and had been cultivating in order to reach the peak of the 9th heaven as soon as possible. He had also made significant progress in body art. Being boosted by Heavenly Venerable tier seals, his cultivation speed was extremely fast. Heavenborn's eyelids moved slightly, and then his eyes opened. It was a pair of clear eyes, with dominance that came from looking down on the rest of the world and absolute self-confidence, but also filled with compassion for mankind. It definitely wasn't Heavenborn. It was obviously the same face and body, but because of the change in his gaze, it made people feel as if he was a completely different person. Heavenly Venerate! The large black dog shouted, his voice trembling. The greater the expectation, the more he was afraid of failure. It's me. Heavenborn nodded. At this moment, he should no longer be Heavenborn, but rather the karmic life Heavenly Venerable. Ling Han laughed heartily. Congratulations, Master. He offered up the Black Tower with both hands. This precious tool accompanied him for many years, from when he was weak to when he became strong, until it left him when he became a Celestial King. Now that he was a 9th Heaven Celestial King, and the Divine Demon Sword also became a Heavenly Venerate tool, he had already carved out a path of his own. Chapter 27-26 27-26 7 Deaths 7 Explosions Pill 27-26 7 Deaths 7 Explosions Pill. The karmic life Heavenly Venerable felt very rueful. In the past, he had chosen to fuse with Heavenly Tao, sealing off the two-realm passageway. He had never anticipated that there would come a day when he could be revived. He accepted the Black Tower, and touched it lightly. He had many words, but ultimately, all this culminated into a sigh. Thank you for your efforts. He nodded at Ling Han and the large black dog. Master, let's return, Ling Han said. They had already been outside for quite a few millennia, and in this period, Hysteria's troops had also charged a few dozen times. Thankfully, they had hidden themselves inside the celestial guest residence, and the target of Hysteria's troops was the barrier. On their way there, they would not carefully survey their surroundings, so no fight took place. Though Ling Han had a lot of confidence in the Empress and the Rain Emperor, he still wanted to return quickly. All right. The karmic life Heavenly Venerable nodded. The 2 men and 1 dog returned to the barrier. All this while, the karmic life Heavenly Venerable was trying to adapt to this new body. Heavenly Venerate, will this affect your progress in future? The large black dog asked. Though Heavenborn's body was as tough as divine metal, and who knew how many people there were that yearned desperately for such a body, it did not mean that the stronger the body, the more suitable it would be for cultivation. Instead, the first consideration would be if the body had any affinity with the soul inside. If there was no affinity, then even if he had Xin Chihu's body, he would not be able to become a Heavenly Venerate. The karmic life Heavenly Venerable nodded. This body was nurtured by the heaven and earth, so it is completely suited to my soul. Moreover, I have also probed into quite a number of secrets of the heaven and earth through it. In fact, I can skip over that unique power of this dimension and advance to become a first-tier heavenly venerate with one of the fundamental powers. It was like Ling Han then. It could not be helped. Being born and nurtured from the heaven and earth meant that it really could be so amazing. When Heavenborn had been in the world's paramount martial academy, he had already been extremely powerful. Now that it was the soul of the karmic life Heavenly Venerable, he would only be even stronger than that. The large black dog howled. Now he had two powerful backers, so it would only be him bullying others, and never the other way round. They returned to the barrier. Strictly speaking, Heavenborn had not died at all. The soul of the karmic life Heavenly Venerable had been residing all this while in this body. Hence, there naturally was no change to his identity at all. They successfully passed through the city wall, and then Ling Han excused himself first, heading off to see the Empress. They had not seen each other for several thousand years, and the Empress had completely stabilized her cultivation level of the ninth heaven. Furthermore, she had progressed even further through fighting in the repeated invasions, and was presently advancing steadily towards the middle stage of the ninth heaven. When she saw Ling Han had returned, the Empress was naturally overjoyed as she kissed and embraced him. When their conversation came to how the karmic life Heavenly Venerable had come back to life, the Empress was also happy for Ling Han. Though she was very proud, the other party was her husband's master, after all. Furthermore, he had saved Ling Han's life twice, so she was very grateful to him. After the two of them were done reminiscing, Ling Han took the Empress to meet the karmic life Heavenly Venerable. As they walked on the streets, they saw the people around them pointing at him, and whispering among themselves. "Is there something on my face?" Ling Han asked the Empress with a grin. The Empress shook her head. "Though you were still high in the #1 spot of the recent leaderboard in these few thousand years, there is no change to your battle merits at all. Thus, it is natural that countless people would start to doubt your strength." "So that's how it is." Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. This really was, the more popular one was, the more they would be gossiped about. He did not believe that there was no one that was not in the same situation as he was, but it was only he that would be faulted, and it was precisely because he held the top spot in the recent leaderboard which had drawn so much critique. However, Ling Han was not concerned at all. Esteem and prestige could only be obtained through genuine battle. What was the use of mere words? After meeting the karmic life Heavenly Venerable, life naturally returned to the usual pattern. Cultivation. Whether it was Ling Han, the Empress, or the karmic life Heavenly Venerable, the path of cultivation that was laid out before them was still long and far ahead. For the karmic life Heavenly Venerable, his path was not smooth sailing, either. Because this was the flaming frost realm, he had to sense that unique power of this heaven and earth again, and though he said that it was possible that he could grasp one of the fundamental powers in advance, he only meant that there might be some chance. Whether it would succeed or fail would have to be seen when the time came. All of them were working hard on cultivation, but several years later, the troops of Hysteria attacked again. This time, there were no small-scale probing battles. From the very beginning, it was a force that was able to topple mountains and overturn seas. They fought for a whole 17 days before they finally managed to block this wave of attack. The elites of the city began to counterattack, hunting down those wandering soldiers. Then, groundbreaking news came out, shocking everyone. After so many years, the barrier had also accumulated enough resources to concoct 3 7-death-7 explosions pills. 4 ninth heaven celestial kings or pseudo-heavenly venerates. This was extraordinarily significant. That was because while the troops of Hysteria would bring massive destruction, it was only pseudo-heavenly venerates and ninth heaven celestial kings that would be dispatched, after all. Even after death, they could be used for alchemy. After countless years of accumulation, there were enough raw ingredients, and there were finally results from alchemy. Because of the difference of heaven and earth, it was also very difficult to refine the troops of Hysteria, especially when these creatures also contained extremely chaotic traits. It was very easy for the cauldron to explode. Hence, usually, it would take trillions and trillions of years to successfully produce a single cauldron of alchemical pills. For cultivators, the 7-death-7 explosions pill had very great benefits. At the same time, its side effects were also strong because the chaotic traits would not be so easily erased. Ingesting this pill could very easily cause one to lose his mind. It was said that only as long as one survived 7 waves of killing intent and the danger of becoming extremely violent in character would he then be able to digest the benefits contained inside this alchemical pill. This was a good opportunity that would allow one to ascend the heavens in a single step. Though there was no way it could help one to break through the barrier to the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier or Heavenly Venerable tier, it would greatly cut down on time spent on cultivation. But there were only 3 7-death 7 explosions pills, so whom should they be given to? If it was to be bestowed on a particular person, who would be satisfied with that? Furthermore, in terms of connections, there were a great many people here that were the descendants of 3rd tier, 4th tier, or even 5th tier and 6th tier heavenly venerates. None of them could be easily offended. Naturally, no one wanted to bear the blame for this, so they came up with a different way to resolve this issue. Battle. Power was what earned respect. This was the real iron rule that would never change in the world of cultivation. Elites possessed everything, and that was the case throughout the ages. Hence, the owners of these 3 7-death 7 explosions pills would also be decided with a tournament. However, if one wanted to join the competition, he had to be in the top 100 of the recent leaderboard. Additionally, there would also be another 28 special spots. After round of elimination, 3 winners would emerge in the end. The first round was to eliminate 99% of the people here. It was as difficult as ascending the heavens to make it into the recent leaderboard. What more when you had to squeeze your way into the top 100? All of them were elites among elites. Furthermore, while they could slowly grind their way into the general leaderboard with enough time, it could not be done for the recent leaderboard. The recent leaderboard would only include the battle merits achieved in the last 1 million years. Those who were ranked in the top 100 naturally had no need to worry. They only had to prepare for their upcoming battles. As for the others, they had their eyes set on the additional 28 spots, and all of them started moving. Not too long later, these spots had all found their owners. Ling Han was number 1 on the recent leaderboard. At least, there was nothing else he had to do for 1 million years, and he could still maintain his spot as the top in the recent leaderboard. But because there was not the slightest improvement in his battle merits, this garnered public critique from the masses. Everyone was fighting furiously, but he would be able to just laze his way into the qualification stage. Who would be convinced by this? There were also many people that were throwing up a ruckus, demanding that Ling Han should be disqualified. Their demands would naturally be disregarded, but this also showed that Ling Han was indeed not very popular. Ling Han couldn't help but ask himself why, but he could not come up with a reason. It all came down to one thing. Anyone who would not be envied by others could only be mediocre. The Empress, the Rain Emperor, the Large Black Dog, and the Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable had all missed this opportunity. Ling Han was filled with confidence. He would definitely be able to obtain a 7-death 7 explosions pill. However, the fact that they would not all be given as a reward to the overall champion couldn't help but make him feel that it was unfortunate. Chapter 2727 2727 Prodigies appear. 2727 Prodigies appear. Binghe, you have already advanced to the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier. Just in time, the realm battlefield has also concocted several 7-death 7 explosions pills, which would be extremely beneficial for your cultivation. I have already requested a spot for you. There is no need for you to continue cultivation in seclusion here. It is time for your name to be known throughout the whole world. In a canyon covered with ice and snow, an old gray-haired man spoke to someone. His beard reached all the way to his chest, but his body looked like it was formed from light and shadow, and did not seem very real. This was because this was not his actual body, but the form taken by a sliver of divine sense. His real body was still at the realm battlefield. This was a supreme character because it wasn't just anyone that could request an additional spot. Yes, master. Pang. A young man broke out of the ice and emerged. His upper body was bare. His skin as fair as snow and as smooth as jade, reflecting the light cast upon him and exuding a gem-like luster. He had a head of black locks that reached his waist, fluttering in the mountain winds, and also revealing his face. Solemn, calm, and determined, as well as radiating an absolute confidence. After the gray-haired elder made his remark, this sliver of divine sense also vanished, turning into countless shards and scattering. This young man raised his head, looking at the skies. From this day onwards, I, Tai Binghe, will become a legend that will be spread all around this world as it enters into my era. At the shores of a great ocean. Chongjun, how many years have you been by my side? A child that looked to be only 6 or 7 years old asked. His arms were crossed behind his back, acting all aged and experienced. Behind him, there was a tall, sturdy young man. All of his muscles stuck out strongly, as if they were rocks. This young man's surname was Qi, and his full name was Qi Chongjun. In reply to Master, about 700 million years, Qi Chongjun answered respectfully, and did not at all treat the other party lightly just because he looked like a child. He knew that this was the mysterious technique that his master cultivated. Every time he experienced the cycle from infanthood to old age, his cultivation level would advance another step. By now, his master had already experienced this 6 times in total. The Windy Cloud's Heavenly Venerate, 6th tier. This child in front of him was not the Windy Cloud's Heavenly Venerate's true body, either, but just a sliver of his divine sense. The Windy Cloud's Heavenly Venerate nodded. In the blink of an eye, you have grown up from that little kid you were. It is all thanks to the teachings of Master. Qi Chongjun said, his head lowered and his eyes filled with adoration. Years ago, he had only been a little homeless beggar. How could he have possibly dared to imagine that there would be a day when he could become a dignified Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate? At the realm battlefield, several 7 deaths 7 explosions pills have been concocted recently. This would be beneficial for you, the Windy Cloud's Heavenly Venerate said casually. I have already requested a participation spot for you. Go, and there is no need for you to return here again. Kill the enemies at the realm battlefield so that you can break through to the Heavenly Venerable tier as soon as you can. Yes, Master. At the Tu clan. The Tu clan was an established noble clan. Their Grand Elder was a 6th tier Heavenly Venerate, and was strong enough to look down on the rest of the world. 7 deaths 7 explosions pills have once again appeared? Haha, I too sure, will use this opportunity to appear, and it is also time that the rest of the world knows that aside from the 3 dragons of the Tu clan, there is also a supreme ferocious tiger. A young man laughed loudly as he walked out of his mansion, soaring into the skies. At the Zhou clan. This was also an established noble clan. A 6th tier Heavenly Venerate had once emerged from this clan, but this mighty figure had already fallen in the war against Hysteria. However, the Zhou clan still had a 3rd tier Heavenly Venerate, who was supporting the whole clan. For the sake of that Grand Elder of the Zhou clan who had passed, the various forces were still very willing to give the Zhou clan some face. However, the more favors were used, the fewer there would be. After all, they could not keep using their Grand Elder as a card to garner compassion. Yenner, your natural talent is outstanding. It is possible that your future accomplishments would surpass the Grand Elders. I hope that when you appear this time, you will be able to make your name known, and show the world the prestige of the Zhou clan once more. In the main hall, a gray-haired old man was presently talking to a young girl. This young girl was as beautiful as peach flowers, but her expression was cold as ice. She nodded. Please don't worry, 7th Granduncle. Yenner will definitely not disappoint the hopes of the clan. Very good, this time, you must make your way into the top 3. And we have also used up all that remaining favors we had just to obtain this one spot for participation. In the future, we really will have to depend all on ourselves. Yenner understands. At Cloud Void Waterfall, the Wu clan. This was a dangerous area that was well known in the Flaming Frost realm. It was located in the boundless Star Sea. A waterfall flowed upside down from the starry skies, and should one look closer, they would realize that what was flowing here was not water, but rather qi of primal chaos. Every streak of qi was as heavy as a star, which was extremely terrifying. The Wu clan was located at Cloud Void Waterfall. Usually, not even lower-level celestial kings were worthy of entering. This was one of the strongest clans of the Flaming Frost realm, or even the entire Genesis world, because the Grand Elder of the Wu clan was a 7th tier Heavenly Venerate. Ha ha ha! Following a loud laugh, a figure traversed out of Cloud Void Waterfall. His black hair fluttered wildly, and his eyes seemed capable of penetrating through the void like light, filled with dominance. I, Wu Haoyang, have finally come out of seclusion. Now there is no one in the world that knows the great name of Wu Haoyang, but it will not take too long before this name is known everywhere in the world. Lin Yulian Xian Chihu, It is not just the two of you that can communicate with the fundamental power of the Genesis world at the ninth heaven. I can too. I will definitely surpass the two of you, and trample both of you under my feet. In this tournament of the realm battlefield, this will be the first battle for me, Wu Hao Yang. Mediocre fools, prepare to tremble before me. There were a total of 28 additional spots in this tournament. As a result, it had drawn out a great many young prodigies. Previously, they would either keep a low profile or bury themselves completely in cultivation without concern for anything else. Now, however, they all emerged like a swarm. However, Ling Han was completely ignorant of all this. His daily routine was just cultivating and cultivating while waiting for the battles to begin. When he had the time, he would pay a visit to the comic life Heavenly Venerable, discussing the further evolution of the Indestructible Heaven Scroll. Though the Indestructible Heaven Scroll had the method to practice a Heavenly Venerate technique, it could not help a Heavenly Venerate's physique cultivate to the complete level of devouring metal. This was because of the limitations of the comic life, Heavenly Venerable himself. At the time, he himself had just been a first-tier Heavenly Venerate. Moreover, he had died early, so he did not have so much time. To comprehend a cultivation technique, a prodigy might only need 10 to 100 years, but the time needed to create a whole new cultivation technique was incredibly extensive, and even after it was created, an extremely large amount of time would still be necessary to make adjustments. Ling Han felt that it was unfortunate that he had not forcefully dragged Wally here as well. Otherwise, this Grand Master of Analysis would definitely be very helpful. Of course, discussion of the Indestructible Heaven Scroll would only be done during their free time. At the moment, for Ling Han, the Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable, and the others, their top priority was still to advance their cultivation level. A month's time passed very quickly, and it was almost time for the tournament to begin. The authorities called this tournament Minor Skill Demonstration. Though the participants were basically all Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates in the realm battlefield, even they could only be considered side characters, so it could indeed only be considered a minor skill demonstration. Ling Han went to draw his lot first, and then waited for the results. His first opponent was Zhou Yan, and their match was also arranged first. There was no other reason except for the fact that Ling Han was presently the number one on the recent leaderboard. When everyone was done drawing their lots, the battles officially began. First match, Ling Han vs. Zhou Yan. The latter was a young man of slender, lanky build, with a pair of mismatched eyes, one golden and the other silver, exuding a devilish air. He showed a smile towards Ling Han, but his smile contained a strong hint of mockery. The number one of the recent leaderboard. Hee, your name is well known. Chapter 27-28. 2728 The battle starts. 2728 The battle starts. Ling Han scratched his head. What was wrong with him being the number one on the recent leaderboard? Could this also draw aggravation? Zhou Yan introduced himself. My ranking is not as high as yours. I am only ranked 89th on the recent leaderboard. Well duh. The people who could take the field today were the top 100 elites on the recent leaderboard, and only 28 people were outsiders. Still, being able to obtain such a qualification, one had to have extraordinary strength. He looked at Ling Han loftily. So what if he was ranked 89th? Just wait and see how he would thrash Ling Han later. The leaderboard of battle merits wasn't a battle roll or strength roll, but it was still a reflection of every person's strength to a great extent. If one wasn't strong enough, how could one kill so many pseudo-heavenly venerates? Therefore, Ling Han, a ninth heaven celestial king, being ranked first made all the pseudo-heavenly venerates on the leaderboard extremely unhappy. Fuck, what have I done to offend you? Ling Han was extremely unhappy. This is just a sparring match. Is there a need for you to bear such great enmity towards me? Fine, then I'll beat the crap out of you, and let you enjoy it to the fullest. Ranked 89th? Ha! Ling Han's face was full of disdain. How many of my moves can you block? A puny ninth heaven celestial king, merely being a lucky bastard. You think you can be arrogant with me? Zhou Yan's face darkened. He didn't believe the previous rumors that Ling Han could actually fight against more than 20 pseudo-heavenly venerates. Wasn't this a joke? Even an elite like himself could only contend against 5 pseudo-heavenly venerates at most, and these had to be people who weren't on the recent leaderboard, or 2 would be overwhelming enough. 1 fighting against 20. And furthermore, he was merely a 9th heaven celestial king. I will teach you how to behave properly. Ling Han rushed out and pang. He immediately burst forth at a terrifyingly high speed with a tap of his foot. The light of fireflies is also worthy of competing with the sun and the moon? Zhou Yan grabbed a streak of great Tao with his left hand, while his right hand balled into a fist, and he blasted it towards Ling Han. In the minor skill demonstration, contestants were allowed to use celestial tools, but were not allowed to use supreme precious tools. This wasn't intentionally targeting Ling Han, but it was for the sake of fairness. Otherwise, those descendants of heavenly venerates would go and borrow precious tools from their elders, and then it wouldn't be their battle, but rather a competition of strength among the heavenly venerates that supported them. Since Ling Han couldn't use the divine demon sword, he didn't plan on using any celestial tool, either, as his power after using the heavenly venerate technique was even stronger. Pang! Zhou Yan grabbed a streak of great Tao and smashed it towards Ling Han, but the latter didn't pay any attention to it. He was instantly hit on the head by it, but it only managed to slow down Ling Han slightly. But at this moment, Zhou Yan's fist also struck towards Ling Han. Ling Han also threw a punch, to counter the attack. Boom! The intense clash led to a big explosion. Fortunately, their battle was carried out in a barren field. This place would be ravaged by Hysteria's army every few years, so it had already become a desolate ground, without any other living creatures. Hence, there was no need to be afraid of harming innocent people. Those who were watching the battle stood far away, and of course there were also people with extraordinary confidence who came to the front, thinking that they could not be injured by the aftermath of the battle. Ling Han and Zhou Yan were seen to retreat more than 50 kilometers from one another, and it seemed that there was hardly any difference between the two of them. This blow also made Ling Han understand that Zhou Yan had already reached the peak of the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier. He understood it very well, but Zhou Yan couldn't accept that he could only fight to a draw with a 9th heaven celestial king. Gasp! Could it be that the rumors weren't just rumors? This thought crossed Zhou Yan's mind, but now it was already too late to delve into this issue, as he was already facing Ling Han. What he needed to consider now would be how to win against his opponent. Rapid Wave Fist. Zhou Yan yelled lightly, and rushed towards Ling Han. 100 kilometers was only the matter of a single step, and he appeared in front of Ling Han, and threw a punch. This punch was extremely domineering, with the aura of primal chaos descending, and the brilliance of the sun and moon circulating. Pang 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 pang. Ling Han raised his fist to counter the attack, but he was shocked to realize that Zhou Yan had thrown 19 punches. Pseudo-Heavenly venerates were all excellent in body art. It was not a big deal to throw tens of thousands of punches in an instant. However, Ling Han's punch was already fast enough, but when he threw a single punch, his opponent had actually thrown 19 punches. This was incredible indeed. Was his body art weaker than that of Zhou Yan? This was obviously impossible. Otherwise the two of them couldn't have fought each other to a draw. Then there could only be one reason. The other party had used a secret technique. This was by no means an ordinary secret technique, but one that was at the level of Heavenly Venerable tier, otherwise, Ling Han would not have been injured. Ling Han lifted his hand. He saw that his palm was split open, with blood oozing out. Furthermore, the healing speed was astonishingly slow. His body was like divine metal, and even the power of the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate could only hurt him at most, but he would recover immediately afterward. However, now that the wound was healing so slowly, there could naturally only be one possibility. The opponent had used a Heavenly Venerate technique, which was then capable of causing such terrible damage. Having established his might with a single strike, Zhou Yan actually turned solemn instead of expressing delight. Ling Han's domineering physique shocked him. He himself had used a Heavenly Venerate technique. If the opponent hadn't similarly used a Heavenly Venerate technique to counter it, Zhou Yan would have been seriously injured without a doubt. But now, Ling Han's injuries were too light, which was inconceivable to Zhou Yan, and he found it unacceptable. How interesting. Ling Han nodded, and launched a counterattack at Zhou Yan. Then, I will also let you have a taste of my fist. He swung his fist, and there was 9-colored lightning crackling on his fist. This was also a Heavenly Venerate technique. Pang! Not to be outdone, Zhou Yan swung his fist in return. This exchange of blows was even more terrifying. Two people with battle prowess of Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier used ultimate moves, which resulted in their battle prowess instantly soaring to the level of the Heavenly Venerable tier. They kept exchanging blows, both wanting to use the greatest force at their disposal to make their opponent bow down. The problem was that no one could endlessly use a Heavenly Venerate technique. Soon, Ling Han could no longer use the 5 elements lightning technique, and the same was true for Zhou Yan as his domineering rapid wave fist technique could no longer be used. Ling Han smiled, and switched to using the 9 transformations divine scroll. It was basically impossible for the Heavenly Venerate technique to be mastered by a non-Heavenly Venerate, and the same was true for Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate. Therefore, unless it was like 9 transformations divine scroll and 5 elements lightning technique, which was split into parts by Prodigies, and subsequently reassembled to be mastered by Celestial Kings and Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates, it could only be passed down as an inheritance, like the Black Tower. Therefore, although Zhou Yan had an elder who was a Heavenly Venerate, through whom he had learned a Heavenly Venerate technique by secret transmission, what if he still wanted to learn a second one? He shouldn't even think about it. Pang! As soon as he countered Ling Han's punch, his expression immediately changed drastically. How could this blow be so strong? He had not even finished the thought when he was sent flying. All he could feel was that his entire arm had gone numb, and perhaps even his bones were broken. He was overwhelmed with shock, and felt it was even more inconceivable. How could Ling Han's strength suddenly increase so much? You have actually mastered 2 Heavenly Venerate techniques. Realization finally dawned on him, but his face was still filled with shock. Though there were many Heavenly Venerates in the Flaming Frost realm now, a Heavenly Venerate technique was also the trump card of every Heavenly Venerate, so how could it be easily passed on to outsiders? Therefore, it was very rare for one person to possess 2 Heavenly Venerate techniques. That's correct. Ling Han rushed over again, swinging both his fists continuously, each move boosted with the 9 transformations divine scroll. Faced with such an attack, Zhou Yan was powerless to resist, so he was being bombarded until he vomited blood unceasingly. He had no choice but to admit defeat and surrender. Ling Han won the first battle. After this battle, Ling Han's strength was finally acknowledged by all. He had struck Zhou Yan, who was ranked 89th on the recent leaderboard. Until the latter conceded defeat, was this still not regarded as strong? Chapter 27-29 27-29 Zhou Yan 27-29 Zhou Yan. The other 63 battles were conducted accordingly, and very soon, the 64 candidates that would progress to the next stage all emerged. And among these results, a considerable number of them were unexpected. Take Zhang Yuan, ranked 17th on the recent leaderboard, as an example. He had lost to a man who had been given a special additional participation spot too sure. And there was also Chong Tian, ranked 31st on the recent leaderboard. He had also lost to a person who was not very well known, and whose name was Zhu Yan. And there was also Zhu Bao, ranked 39th, who had lost to Qi Chongjun. Every time an unexpected result emerged, it would cause incredible shock. It should be known that every single person that could be ranked in the top 100 of the recent leaderboard was an elite, and there was definitely no one mediocre among them. An exception like Ling Han had only appeared once in history. Moreover, Ling Han had also used his strength to show that he was qualified to be ranked first on the recent leaderboard. But now, the veteran elites had all lost one after another, while rookies replaced them. What was going on here? There were actually so many young elites that had been hidden? Then why had they been so unknown before? The most astonishing was a man named Wu Haoyang. He was actually only a 9th Heaven Celestial King. A 9th Heaven Celestial King had defeated a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate, just like Ling Han. When Ling Han found out about this, he too was involuntarily surprised. Previously, Lin Piaoxue said that he was not a special case, and there were similarly others that could wield Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier power at the 9th Heaven Celestial King tier, yet the ones she knew about were already characters from several 100 million years ago. However, a real example had appeared now. Hysteria was wreaking havoc, and the whole Genesis world was in peril, but it had also greeted a great boom of prodigies. This Wu Haoyang seems to be worthy of a battle. A smile appeared at the corners of Ling Han's lips. Not only did he not feel the slightest sliver of anxiety, he was instead filled with fighting spirit. Previously, There had been Ji Wuming who constantly exerted endless pressure on him, and then it had been Heavenborn, and they had been obstacles which he definitely had had to pass. By now, the two of them had become a matter of the past. Though Ling Han would not relax, if there was a strong rival, he would definitely be even more motivated. After resting for a few days, the second round of battles continued. There was no need to draw lots for this, as the matches had already been decided during the first drawing of lots. Ling Han's next opponent was named Zhou Yan. Though this person's name had the word rock, he was actually very lanky and slender, without any feeling of sturdiness or hardness one. In fact, he was slightly on the thin side. Zhou Yan, he introduced himself. 42nd on the recent leaderboard. Previously, Go Yan had only been ranked at 89th, yet this man was ranked in the top half of the top 100, which showed that his strength was definitely a great increase from Go Yan. Ling Han. Ling Han nodded. He was actually not an arrogant person. Please. Zhou Yan clasped his fists politely, and his gaze suddenly turned harsh and serious. Ling Han also made a gesture of invitation, and then took the initiative to attack first. Pang! The two of them exchanged a blow without any false moves, probing one another. Power of the peak stage Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier. Both of them mentally concluded so, but Ling Han was nodding mentally. Zhou Yan was indeed stronger than Go Yan. This was decided by their respective natural talent and Zhou Yan's capacity to accommodate power that was greater than Go Yan's. In this instant, neither of them used ultimate moves. They were clashing with standard battle prowess, but after around 100 moves, both of them were getting impatient. Drizzle rioting wind's fist. Zhou Yan exclaimed lightly. His aura immediately changed. His left fist became fragile and weak like the drizzling rains of March. Landing a punch with this fist would be soft, but the punches thrown from his right hand would be like the wild winds of the sea, filled with intimidation. Movement and stasis were exhibited in this fist technique at the same time, which was incredibly bizarre. A ripping feeling immediately rose up in Ling Han. On the one side, his body seemed like it wanted to move quickly as well, but on the other side, his body wanted to stay immobile, which caused him great discomfort. It was not just his body, but also his soul as well. It felt like it would be forcibly torn in two. This fist technique is quite interesting. Ling Han used the indestructible Heaven Scroll, expelling all the discomfort. Heavenly Venerate technique versus Heavenly Venerate technique. Seeing how Ling Han was standing firm like a golden bell, enshrouded by countless golden seals and completely dispelling his offensive, Zhou Yan couldn't help but pale. You have actually mastered a third Heavenly Venerate technique. The recording of Ling Han's previous battle with Go Yan had long since been studied, and there naturally would be people who would ask Go Yan. The involved party would definitely have a clearer idea of Ling Han's strength, and they came to the conclusion that Ling Han had mastered two Heavenly Venerate techniques, and that was how he had subdued Go Yan. But now, Ling Han had shown a third Heavenly Venerate technique. Heavens, could it be that there had been 3 Heavenly Venerates that had emerged from his clan before, so each one of them had taught him a different Heavenly Venerate technique? Zhou Yan was thinking furiously. It was not that there weren't any forces that had produced 3 Heavenly Venerates before, but none of them seemed like they had the surname Ling. Tong tong tong. Countless attacks landed on Ling Han, and they were all blocked by these protective golden seals, and turned into dazzling bits of light. In the distance, the karmic life Heavenly Venerable nodded with gratification. This disciple's mastery of the indestructible Heaven Scroll was only inferior to his in level, but in terms of detail, he even looked like he, the disciple, would soon surpass the master. This was very normal. Not only had Ling Han discussed this with Wally before, and made adjustments to the indestructible Heaven Scroll, he was also extracting void particle energy, and the quality of void particle energy was superior to that unique power of the celestial realm. Hence, if they were both at the level of indestructible divine metal physique, it would definitely be Ling Han who would be superior to the karmic life Heavenly Venerable. I wonder what this 7 Death 7 Explosions pill tastes like. The large black dog smacked his lips. He was naturally confident that Ling Han could make his way into the top 3, and was already thinking about how he was going to steal the prize from Ling Han's hands. Meanwhile, the Empress and the Rain Emperor were watching from the sidelines, similarly hoping that Ling Han could win sooner. In the battle, Zhou Yan was exhibiting his full power. He wanted to blast through Ling Han's defense in a single stroke, and use his superior battle prowess to defeat Ling Han. Otherwise, when he could no longer use the Heavenly Venerate technique, he would only be able to dodge and evade when he was faced with Ling Han's counterattack. He had confidence in himself because his power was stronger. However, the strength of Ling Han's defense caused him to lose all hope. Though every single one of Zhou Yan's punches ripped through the golden seals, whenever a seal dimmed, a new one would immediately come into being, causing the golden bell around Ling Han to be indestructible and immovable. After about half a day later, even Zhou Yan could no longer channel the Heavenly Venerate technique, and his battle prowess immediately fell. Ling Han smiled and said, "Should we continue this battle?" He only stayed on the defense without attacking, and it was already enough to use up the largest trump card up Zhou Yan's sleeve. Furthermore, he still had 2 Heavenly Venerate techniques that he had yet to use, so how was Zhou Yan supposed to block that? Of course, Zhou Yan declared. Ling Han could exhaust one of his powerful moves, and he was sure that he, too, could do the same. Furthermore, his power was greater, and in terms of standard battle prowess, he would be able to subdue Ling Han. All right. Ling Han rushed forth, throwing out his fists in a barrage of punches. He had not been channeling the 5 elements lightning technique or the 9 transformations divine scroll constantly, but would rather use them on occasion. It was still fine for the 5 elements lightning technique, as there would be clear signs of its use, but there were no warning signs for the 9 transformations divine scroll, which really caught Zhou Yan off guard. If he tried to block it, that strike would be a heavy blow, but if he dodged and Ling Han was actually just delivering a normal punch, it would be embarrassing for him. Thus, it was seen that Zhou Yan was continuously jumping around, not daring to take one of Ling Han's blows head-on at all. This naturally meant that he would not be able to win. Hence, after a very long period of staying on the defense, he could no longer hold back, and began his counterattack. Pang! As Ling Han met this change with a punch, frightening power erupted. Instantly, Zhou Yan was sent flying. Chapter 2730 2730 Change of Rules 2730 Change of Rules. Zhou Yan had been tricked. He had just realized it when he saw Ling Han burst out with power. Pang! The latter had already caught up to him, and next was a series of furious blows. After this series of moves, Zhou Yan finally could no longer hold on, and collapsed on the ground, unable to stand back up again. Ling Han obtained his second victory easily. In the other battles, those rookies from before continued to play the roles of dark horse, similarly winning easily. The most astonishing one among them was still Wu Haoyang. His opponent was an elite ranked 6th on the recent leaderboard, and he was just a little bit away from breaking through to become a genuine Heavenly Venerate, but Wu Haoyang still beat down on him. His opponent couldn't even counter a single move, and he could only forfeit the battle in the end. And in these 2 battles, Wu Haoyang had used a total of 3 Heavenly Venerate techniques, not inferior to Ling Han. This stunned everyone. That was 3 Heavenly Venerate techniques. If they used it one after another, who would be able to block it? Ultimately, Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates still had pseudo in their name, meaning that they were not real Heavenly Venerates. It looked like Ling Han and Wu Haoyang should both be able to obtain a 7 death 7 explosions pill, as long as they did not encounter each other before reaching the top 4. If they did, one of them would definitely be eliminated. Why were the 9th Heaven Celestial Kings also terrifying? Once the battles for the second round were over, there were only 32 participants left that could continue in the tournament. Several days later, the 3rd tournament round began, and Ling Han met his 3rd opponent. Yu Bolong, his opponent introduced himself. He had a head of yellow fur. His eyes slitted snake-like pupils that were flashing with green and yellow light. His skin also bore serpent scales, while there were a pair of wings sprouting from his back and a long tail dragging behind him. Recent leaderboard, 7th. The elites in the top 10 could be considered big shots. In truth, Yu Bolong was indeed one of the big shots here. It was said that his general results were already close to climbing the general leaderboard. His time of fighting on the first spatial level far surpassed any other person. It was rumored that he had not broken through to the Heavenly Venerable tier yet because he wanted to leave his name on the general leaderboard. After all, the recent leaderboard would be updated every 1,000 years, and one's name could only remain there for 1,000,000 years at most. So how could it be compared with the general leaderboard? Ling Han nodded. Ling Han, please. Yu Bolong did not waste time on words, and moved directly. Boom! With a flap of his wings, a powerful hurricane was created. Dust and dirt flew everywhere, and vision was obscured. Ling Han was slightly surprised because dirt and dust normally could not obstruct the eyesight of a pseudo-heavenly venerate, yet he actually could only glimpse Yu Bolong's vague figure, which naturally was abnormal. What had his opponent done? Xiao! Right at this moment, the powerful winds assailed Ling Han, and he watched as Yu Bolong charged towards him, with his wings flapping strongly behind him. He held a spear in hand, which he stabbed towards Ling Han. Ling Han went forwards to meet the attack. Pang! He threw a punch, but his fist directly passed through Yu Bolong's body, and did not land a solid hit at all. Ling Han had used full power in this punch, but it had missed, which immediately made him feel extremely terrible. Thankfully, he had a body of divine metal, or this punch missing would even cause his arm to dislocate. Illusion. Ling Han's eyes narrowed slightly. This was quite interesting. He caught sight of the figure in the cloud of dust. Xiao. This figure suddenly became larger, and approached him closely. Yu Bolong had reappeared. This time, however, he was holding a sword in hand, and he stabbed it at Ling Han. Ling Han clenched a fist and threw out a punch in response. Pang! It was just another virtual image. Thankfully, Ling Han was prepared this time, and dissipated the force of his blow in time, so it did not cause him any suffering. However, this illusion technique was quite amazing because Ling Han had no way of distinguishing if the person attacking him was the real one or just a false double. If he did not move to parry, and it was actually the real person attacking him, and he was hit with a powerful attack from a pseudo-heavenly venerate, that would definitely be no joke. Divine metal would also become scrap when faced with the destructive power of the heavenly venerable tier. Yu Bolong continuously appeared and attacked, and Ling Han also continuously countered, treating every single attack like it was one coming from the real body. This would exhaust some of Ling Han's power, but he had abundant stamina now, so this was no big deal. As long as he took note to dissipate the power of his blows when necessary, and did not injure himself, it would be fine. Pang pang pang. Over 100 of his punches missed their target in a row. Xiao, as usual, Yu Bolong swept out his saber, and Ling Han met this blow, but it was still a miss. This was not strange at all, but quickly afterwards, another figure appeared. It was still Yu Bolong. At this time, Ling Han was dispersing his power. His figure twisted. This was the moment when his defense would be at its utmost weakest. Break! Yu Bolong moved. The weapon in his hand was a sharp dagger, which he delivered in a stab directed under Ling Han's ribs. This was a celestial tool, which was flickering with countless seals. The real one had finally attacked. Ling Han had expected this. This kind of battle tactic would definitely be a mixture of truth and falsehood, wanting him to panic on his own and reveal a gap in his defense. Wang! Circles of golden seals immediately appeared around his body, and wrapped all around him. Ji! The sharp dagger stabbed the golden seals, but only endless bits of light sparked. There was no way to pierce through Ling Han's defense at all. Yu Bolong had not landed his strike, so he immediately withdrew to retreat, wanting to distance himself, and find another chance to make a second attempt. Get over here! Ling Han moved, grabbing out at Yu Bolong's wrist. This grab was incredibly and extraordinarily fast. Yu Bolong was searching for chances all the time, but wasn't Ling Han doing the same? Pa! Yu Bolong turned around to attack Ling Han, naturally not willing to surrender his hand to Ling Han. Both of their hands danced and flipped fluidly, tapping, pressing, pushing and striking, conducting an intense contest with each other in a small range. All Ling Han had to do was to cling to his opponent. With a battle cry, his entire approached fluidly. Pang pang pang. The two of them continued an endless exchange of blows. At this time, Ling Han's advantage was fully displayed, had a physique of divine metal. He would not be greatly affected with every punch, kick, or even a strike from the celestial tool, but it was a different story for Yu Bolong. If a punch landed on him, his bones would definitely break and his skin would tear. In this kind of close-quarters fight, neither of them had a chance to use a heavenly venerate technique. Even if this would only take half a heartbeat, they were fighting too intensely, so what time would they have for this? Who knew how many blows they would sustain if they had to delay this little bit of time? Of course Ling Han could do this. What would it matter if he was hit a few times? His body was akin to divine metal. As long as he was not struck by someone with heavenly venerable tier battle prowess, there would be no issue. Yu Bolong was hit repeatedly. Pang pang pang. A series of 17 punches landed consecutively on his chest. His whole face instantly turned crimson, and even his eyes looked close to popping out. I forfeit, he declared. Ling Han stopped and watched as Yu Bolong hurriedly retreated several hundred kilometers away, coughing repeatedly, and bringing up blood with his coughs, which dyed his chest red. Yu Bolong looked meaningfully at Ling Han, then turned and left. A pseudo-heavenly venerate had lost to a 9th heaven celestial king. Even if he felt great dissatisfaction, and had 10,000 reasons to explain, how could he bring himself to say it? In the other battle stages, the dark horses continued their invincible legends. All of them had yet to lose. However, after the top 16 were decided, the tournament rules suddenly changed. Originally, the next round was to produce the top 8 and then the top 4, who would then battle among themselves to decide the first, second, and third. The 3 7 death 7 explosions pills would naturally then have their owners. But now, the tournament rules had changed so that one person would be eliminated every day, until there were only 3 people left at the very end, and that would be the end of the tournament. There was no first, second, or third place, just the top 3. The rules were very simple. 16 people would have 1 day's time to contend for 15 spots. After the day was over, the person who had not managed to get a spot would be eliminated. Next, it would be 15 people contending for 14 spots and so on. Ling Han was quite intrigued. Under such regulations, it was possible that situations of 2 against 1, 5 against 1, or even 15 against 1, wherein the majority would work together to eliminate certain people from the tournament, would arise. The tournament would take place 3 days later. Chapter 2731. 2731 Madman. 2731 Madman. How long could 3 days be? More importantly, there was not much time that could be wasted here. If it took a long time, what if Hysteria's troops attacked? That would not be fun. After Ling Han made some slight adjustments, he arrived at the venue for the tournament. Because the rules this time round were different, it naturally could no longer be conducted outside the city wall. Instead, a heavenly venerate had taken out a heavenly venerate tool, and the battles would be conducted after everyone entered into this heavenly venerate tool. A heavenly venerate tool naturally could withstand the mad barrage from battles between pseudo-heavenly venerates. Merely in terms of toughness, it would have to be a 6th-tier heavenly venerate at least that could truly damage a heavenly venerate tool. The 16 contenders arrived, one after another. If Ling Han was counted as well, there were as many as 6 rookies this time round. The other 10 were all elites on the recent leaderboard, and they all ranked in the top 20. However, after the previous battles, everyone no longer had such an optimistic idea about them, and thought that this was a world that belonged to the rookies. You guys, do you think the sudden change in the tournament is to restrain the rise of the rookies? There were also a great many people who had come to watch. They whispered among themselves, and were also discussing the abrupt change in rules. It is very possible. If it is a one-on-one battle, it is possible that the top 3 spots will all be claimed by rookies. Now that the rules have changed, it is possible that the rookies will be expelled by the combined forces of the veterans one after another. That's right. Firstly, the rookies are unfamiliar with one another, so it is very difficult for them to work together. Secondly, even if the rookies were willing to cooperate, in terms of numbers, they would also be at an absolute disadvantage. Hence, it is possible that the rookies will all be wiped out of the tournament in the first few days. Just when everyone was conversing, a heavenly venerate appeared, and announced solemnly, "The 16 tournament participants, you may all enter." Ling Han and the others thus entered into the heavenly venerate tool one after another. For the majority, this was nothing unfamiliar. They definitely had a heavenly venerable tier elite supporting them, so they would definitely have come in contact with heavenly venerate tools before. This was a barren space very much like the depths of the galaxy. There was nothing here, yet 15 chairs appeared abruptly here now, every chair set far apart from the others. Additionally, there was also a giant hourglass, but the sand inside had not started flowing yet. Clearly, when the hourglass moved, the battles would begin. When the sand in the hourglass finished flowing, that day would end. The person who had not managed to get a seat could only withdraw from the tournament in dejection. Just when the 16 people were still observing, the hourglass moved. The tournament had already begun. Hee. As expected, the 10 veterans stood together, sizing up the 6 rookies. Clearly, after they had found out the present rules of the tournament, they already kept each other informed and reached a mutual agreement to eliminate the rookies from the tournament first. Ling Han had not been informed, so he naturally had been rejected. Will you guys leave of your own volition, or do you choose to be expelled by our combined forces? One of the veterans asked. Nothing but a bunch of pushovers. You think you are worthy of acting insolent in front of me? Wu Haoyang stepped out, his pride soaring sky high. I alone can deal with all of you together. How dare you? Insolence! The veterans all shouted angrily. All of them had powerful backgrounds. They were the descendants of either 3rd tier or 4th tier heavenly venerates. Haha, just see how I will sweep all of you aside, trash. Wu Haoyang took the initiative to charge out. Wang. His whole body glowed, and could no longer be seen clearly. Xiao. He made a move on the veterans, countless beams of light shooting out simultaneously. This guy was really very arrogant. He really had challenged 10 pseudo-heavenly venerates all by himself. It should be known that these 10 people were all elites on the recent leaderboard. Who among them was not a prodigy among prodigies? But Wu Haoyang ignored all that, and charged over decisively, challenging the 10 great elites all by himself. What arrogance! The 10 great elites all roared in fury, each of them moving to strike out at Wu Haoyang. This was the inside of a heavenly venerate tool, and every single movement would be genuinely recorded by the heavenly venerate tool, and would then be replayed outside. Hence, the spectators could all see this suicide-like action from Wu Haoyang. This guy, he's mad. Those are 10 pseudo-heavenly venerates, and all of them are super elites that could possibly break through in the next very instant. One is already hard to deal with, and it will mean definite defeat to fight 2 at the same time. What more when there are 10 of them? 6 against 10. There may be just a little bit of chance. This guy has cast aside the rest of the group. He is merely committing suicide. Everyone shook their head. This young man truly had freakish talent, possessing strength that could match Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier when he was only a 9th Heaven Celestial King, but it was also due to this that he had become too arrogant, and actually dared to act so recklessly. If one was too self-centered, he would definitely suffer in the future. Ling Han's eyes were also narrowed slightly. Could it be that Wu Haoyang had the same physique as he did? Otherwise, how could he dare to fight all 10 of them alone? The results were soon out. Wu Haoyang did not have a super strong physique, but he turned into a streak of light. He had really become untouchable by any attack, and would not be harmed by any power. The attacks delivered by the 10 great pseudo-heavenly venerates could not even touch him, so what damage could there be? But Wu Haoyang's attacks were extremely domineering. As his hands threw out blasts, streaks of light blinded the eyes. In fact, they could even directly enter into the mind, and inflict damage on the spirit itself. This was very frightening, and all the 10 great elites grunted. Due to them being off guard, they suffered a slight loss. Through just this exchange, Wu Haoyang could be proud of himself. A 9th Heaven Celestial King faced 10 peak stage pseudo-heavenly venerates, yet it was he that had taken the upper hand. This was practically a strange phenomenon that had never been seen before. Too amazing. Why has such a powerful man never been heard of before? Could it be that he will be creating a miracle? Everyone was exclaiming in shock, and even Ling Han was slightly surprised, feeling moved by Wu Haoyang's strength. Wu Haoyang followed up on his advantage. He attacked relentlessly, blasting out majestic light continuously. This possessed frightening destructive power, and even the 10 great pseudo-heavenly venerates were slightly worn out from parrying, no longer able to form an effective, collaborated offensive. Merely from this angle, Wu Haoyang was really strong. He alone beat down on 10 great pseudo-heavenly venerates so hard that they were forced to fight alone. They had no choice but to temporarily retreat, leaving the scope of attack for Wu Haoyang. Then, after a slight pause, they all used various heavenly venerate techniques, which surged forward to counter Wu Haoyang. The power of ants. Wu Haoyang laughed madly. He was still unafraid, and aggressively charged forwards to meet this offense. His body was extremely strange. Even the heavenly venerate techniques used by the 10 great pseudo-heavenly venerates could not touch him. They could only suffer under his mad barrage of attacks. Not only did this shock and confuse the 10 great pseudo-heavenly venerates, the spectators outside were also grasping their heads and exclaiming at how inconceivable this was. Even Ling Han and the other rookies couldn't help but frown, because eventually they themselves would have to face Wu Haoyang. If it was them, how would they neutralize this situation? Ling Han was also asking himself mentally, how could Wu Haoyang be so strong? Firstly, he had to have used one of the 6 fundamental powers of the Genesis world to temper his body, and only that could allow him to possess pseudo-heavenly venerable tier battle prowess when he himself was only a 9th heaven celestial king. Secondly, this cultivation technique that he was using was extremely unique, allowing him to ignore even heavenly venerate techniques. Ling Han closed his eyes and analyzed this carefully. After a while, he came up with a deduction. Perhaps Wu Haoyang could draw upon and use void particle energy or a similar energy. It was superior to that unique power of the flaming frost realm. Precisely because this kind of energy was unleashing its might, even the 10 great pseudo-heavenly venerates could not succeed in their attacks. As for why Wu Haoyang could use the power that only heavenly venerates could use, that was something that only he knew. Chapter 2732. 2732 Invincible. 2732 Invincible. This kind of scene was really unforgettable. A 9th heaven celestial king had unleashed his divine might, and actually beat down on 10 great pseudo-heavenly venerates so hard that they could only parry. What kind of monster was this? Even Ling Han felt an urge to mock this, though it was usually others that would be calling him a monster. Wu Haoyang was not the type that would only rely on his natural talent. He was arrogant, but he was not dumb at all. He focused his attack on one single pseudo-heavenly venerate, and no matter how the others attacked him, he ignored it. There was no way he could be wounded at all. And various heavenly venerate techniques were channeled with his hands, very soon crippling that pseudo-heavenly venerate, who lost all ability to continue. Wu Haoyang chuckled, and set his eyes on another pseudo-heavenly venerate. It was just less than half a day's time, and there were 5 pseudo-heavenly venerates that were inflicted with serious injuries, unable to continue the battle. Everyone was shocked, not daring to believe this at all. If it was claimed that Wu Haoyang had mastered a heavenly venerate technique, how could it be that the others had not? Furthermore, why could he maintain this state constantly, and no force could wound him at all? This was too weird. This was equivalent to cheating. How could others possibly defeat him? It should be known that pseudo-heavenly venerates were ultimately not heavenly venerates, so they could not possibly use a heavenly venerate technique all the time, but Wu Haoyang had broken this fixed rule, and created a miracle. Is this really a 9th heaven celestial king? Are you sure that this is not a disguised heavenly venerate? Everyone was starting to doubt this. This was too abnormal. Hee, if you guys knew whom he is descended from, you would not have such doubts, the heavenly venerate that was overseeing the battle said calmly. Everyone couldn't help but turn their eyes towards him. That heavenly venerate smiled. His surname is Wu. Just think, what other mighty figure has the surname of Wu? Wu, Wu, Wu. After thinking for a while, some people couldn't help but look astonished. There were a good number of heavenly venerates with the surname Wu, but there should only be one that could request a spot of participation, and could also be considered a powerful figure. 7th tier heavenly venerate, Wu Jihong. If Wu Haoyang was the descendant of a 7th tier heavenly venerate, then it was understandable. That was because a 7th tier heavenly venerate was omnipotent, so what would nurturing a freak be worth? The 6th, the 7th, the 8th. The day had not passed when the 10 great pseudo-heavenly venerates had all been defeated one after another, losing all ability to battle. Wu Haoyang stood proudly, showing invincible might. The eyes of those female cultivators outside were all shining brilliantly, their owners wanting nothing more than to rush inside so they could pounce on Wu Haoyang. Whether it was Wu Haoyang's own strength or his background, they were enough to make him someone who would be sought after by many. This was the kind of dream husband that all women fantasized about. At that moment, everyone was quiet, seemingly to show respect to Wu Haoyang. Wu Haoyang showed a proud grin. In his eyes, this was just a matter of course. He was a man that would eventually pull the two supreme freaks, Lin Yuan and Xian Qihu, off their high horse. All others would be mediocre, and were completely below his notice. He directly walked to one of the chairs, and then took a seat. Ling Han and the others all had varying thoughts on their minds, but they each found a place and sat down. The day had passed, and not one of the 10 great Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates stood back up. All of them were eliminated from the tournament. Who would have anticipated this result? They had thought that with the joined forces of the 10 great Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates, it would definitely have been the rookies that would all have been eliminated. They had not thought that they would all have been defeated by a supreme freak instead. After this battle, Wu Haoyang's name shot sky high, no other capable of matching him. Even despite Ling Han's previous battle, which was a confrontation against more than 20 Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates. But firstly, out of these Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates, only He Yufeng alone had his name on the recent leaderboard, and he was only ranked in the 800s to 900s, so how could he compare to these 10 people? Additionally, Wu Haoyang had defeated these people, unlike Ling Han, whom those Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates just couldn't harm. With such a comparison, it was naturally Wu Haoyang that would seem stronger. Ling Han returned. The Empress, the Rain Emperor, the Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable, and the large black dog had all come, and they were all discussing Wu Haoyang. This is unfathomable strength. Though Heavenborn had a body of divine metal, a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate would be enough to restrain him, and should they use a Heavenly Venerate technique, they would be able to deal him serious injury. But Wu Haoyang is completely unaffected by any force, and cannot be injured by any power. How could there be such a monster? Could it be that he is nurtured from the flaming frost realm itself? No, I heard that he is the descendant of a 7th-tier Heavenly Venerate. The Comic Life Heavenly Venerable pondered for a moment. I think that this should be related to that 7th-tier Heavenly Venerate. Otherwise, even if this man can now communicate with the fundamental power of the Genesis world, it is still not possible that he can possess such divine might. Ling Han and the others nodded as well. This deduction was more logical. I'll find a chance to battle him tomorrow, and I will be able to gain a more subjective understanding of him, Ling Han said. Little Han, that's not appropriate, is it? The large black dog hurriedly asked. In any case, there is the 7 deaths 7 explosions pill. With your strength, obtaining one of those pills naturally is an easy matter. What need is there for you to battle so soon with Wu Haoyang? He persuaded, it would be better for you to wait until you have obtained the prize, and then spar with him. Even the Comic Life Heavenly Venerable expressed agreement. He was very confident in Ling Han's strength, but Wu Haoyang was really too powerful. There was really no need to battle with him now. Ling Han could not hold up against their persuasion, so he could only agree to maintain a low profile, and obtain the prize first. It was the second time for the tournament to continue, but 10 chairs had been withdrawn directly. 6 people were left to contend for 5 seats. They entered into the Heavenly Venerate Tool one after another, and stood more than 50 kilometers away from each other. I really had not expected that 10 people would have been eliminated in a single stroke yesterday. This kind of unexpected result is what is exciting. Would there be 3 people directly eliminated today, and the final 3 would be produced? It is possible. Outside, everyone was chatting spiritedly. Going by Wu Haoyang's personality, he definitely would not be playing by the rules this time round, either. The hourglass moved, and the tournament had begun. Wu Haoyang crossed his arms behind his back. All of you get out. What? Everyone was dazed upon hearing this. He had defeated 10 veterans all by himself yesterday, and today he wanted to clash against all the other rookies. Were you planning to make yourself a public enemy? This guy was indeed unwilling to behave, and he was even more extreme this time. If Ling Han and the others all forfeited, there would not be any top 3, and he would be the only victor. Shouldn't those 3 7 deaths 7 explosions pills be given to him then? It could not be denied that though Wu Haoyang was arrogant in his manner of doing things, he was not the slightest bit foolish. See, hadn't he created a chance for himself to be able to take the prizes of the top 3 all for himself? Was this not clever? Was this not innovative enough? Wu Haoyang, you really think that you are strong to the point of being invincible? Qi Chongjun spoke, his muscles protruding strongly, exuding an astonishing feeling of strength. It seemed like once blood started flowing, even the stars would be struck down. Stop spouting nonsense. If you guys will not scram on your own, I will give you guys a hand, Wu Haoyang declared impatiently. He was sure that if he had 3 7-death 7 explosions pills, then not only would he be able to advance to the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier, he would be able to forge onwards a great distance from there. His targets were Lin Yuan and Xine Chihu, and he was frantically trying to catch up to the two of them and then defeat them so he could announce to the world that only he was the strongest prodigy in the entire Genesis world, and it was only he that would be able to defeat Hysteria in the future. He had no time to waste with these so-called prodigies. They were not worthy of his time at all. Then, we can only settle this on the battlefield, Zhou Yan said coldly, her aloof and icy demeanor even more apparent. Everyone was prepared to make their move. It was not just Wu Haoyang. It was possible that the others would also become their enemies. Bunch of stubborn idiots. Wu Haoyang charged out aggressively. Chapter 2733. 2733 Solution. 2733 Solution. Wu Haoyang was extremely overbearing. In his eyes, whether it was the 10 elites of the recent leaderboard from yesterday, or these rookies that had risen as a new force, they would all be swept aside by his overwhelming power. He spread out his arms, one arm turning into boundless vines that extended towards Ling Han, Tai Binghe, Tu Shi, and Zhu Yan, while the other arm turned into a fiery dragon that descended on Qi Chongjun. The vines instantly grew out, turning into a forest as if they would isolate Ling Han and the others so Wu Haoyang and Qi Chongjun could battle first. Qi Chongjun let out a battle cry, and approached fearlessly. Pang! The fiery dragon blasted into him, flames surging, but Qi Chongjun rushed out of the flames in an instant. The clothes he was wearing were all burning red, but his skin that was exposed was unscathed. This was astonishing. The robes that he had been wearing had been woven from threads forged from divine metal. Now, even the divine metal was completely red from the heat, but his skin did not show any change at all. This defense was too strong. Haha, it is not just you that has an invincible defense. Qi Chongjun laughed loudly, his arms coming together as he hammered strongly down on Wu Haoyang. You call this invincible? Wu Haoyang scoffed. He raised his right arm and pang. He immediately parried the blow that Qi Chongjun's joined arms were about to land on him. Just see how I will tear this defense apart. On the other side, the forest of vines had already been destroyed. Several young prodigies stood proudly, all exuding a fighting spirit that soared sky high. However, they did not move, but merely stood with their arms crossed behind their backs, observing the battle between Qi Chongjun and Wu Haoyang in silence. They were too proud, and disdained joining forces with others. I really have underestimated you guys slightly. However, there is not much difference. Wu Haoyang laughed loudly, and again charged to attack Qi Chongjun. Qi Chongjun was domineering as well, charging forwards with his fists. Boom, boom, boom. The two of them exchanged blows. In terms of power, it was still Qi Chongjun that had a slight upper hand, but it had not reached the point that it would give him a crushing advantage. Your ability only goes so far. Qi Chongjun sneered. Is that so? Wu Haoyang revealed a devilish grin. Wang. He suddenly exuded light from all over, and then turned into a streak of light. Here it was again. Everyone was serious. Yesterday, after Wu Haoyang had turned into a streak of light, he could not be touched by any attack or wounded by any force. Now, he again entered into such a state. Did Qi Chongjun have any way to solve this? Boom. Qi Chongjun brandished his fists, yet they simply swept through Wu Haoyang's body, and did not cause the slightest bit of damage. As expected, even Qi Chongjun had no solution. Hee hee. Wu Haoyang laughed coldly, stretching out his right hand to grab at Qi Chongjun's head. This move had a very strong demeaning nature, clearly showing his disdain for Qi Chongjun. Qi Chongjun humphed, and his figure retreated rapidly. He had naturally thought about what he should do when he was on the receiving end of a counterattack from Wu Haoyang if his attack did not take effect. Thus, this blow from Wu Haoyang had not exceeded his expectations. Wu Haoyang's strike instantly missed. He did not take it to heart though. With a tap of his foot, his figure pounced out once more, setting off after Qi Chongjun. The two of them battled once more, but this could no longer be called a battle. No matter what Qi Chongjun did, he could not land a hit on Wu Haoyang. Then, no matter how heaven-defying his battle prowess was, there was no way he could unleash it. Thus, this was a one-sided chase. Wu Haoyang chased, while Qi Chongjun fled. It could not be said that Qi Chongjun's strength was inferior to Wu Haoyang, but Wu Haoyang presently could not be wounded by any power, and was completely invincible, so Qi Chongjun could only run continuously. Could it be that there was nothing that could be done to Wu Haoyang? His battle prowess was indeed very strong, and he had mastered at least 3 heavenly venerate techniques, but everyone here thought that they would not be inferior to him. But how could they manage to wound Wu Haoyang? This had thus become their greatest problem. Previously, when Heavenborn had just entered into the world's paramount martial academy, even 9th Heaven's celestial kings were helpless against him, and that was because he had a body of divine metal. Yet now, Wu Haoyang had progressed even further from that. He couldn't even be touched. It should be known that Heavenborn could still be subdued, and could still be trapped, but there really was nothing that could be done to Wu Haoyang. "Let me try," Tu Shi exclaimed, and charged towards Wu Haoyang. He pounced like a ferocious tiger, his whole body wrapped with shadowy light, as if this was the primal chaos that had been around when the world first came into being, exuding the air of that ancient primitive age. "It is the same if I defeat you first." Wu Haoyang turned around, and blasted Tu Shi. Pang! Tu Shi delivered a strike, but it still passed through Wu Haoyang's body. Similarly, it could not cause any damage. "You have overestimated your own abilities." Wu Haoyang smirked coldly, and struck out at Tu Shi. Tu Shi hurriedly retreated, but it was still too late. The strike swept against him, and instantly left behind a wound in his torso. Blood gushed out in torrents. Thankfully, he had managed to retreat quite quickly, so this injury was not too serious. "Who else is there?" Wu Haoyang stood, his arms crossed behind his back. He realized that though the 5 people here today still could not do anything to him, their strength was much greater than that of the 10 from yesterday, and they would not be so easy to deal with. Of course, he was still invincible. "Let me try then." Zhou Yan stepped out. Her figure was slender and enchanting, as cold as ice, yet alluring as peach blossoms at the same time. A stunned expression flashed across Wu Haoyang's face, but he immediately withdrew it. In his eyes, beautiful women were only to be used to add flavor to life, while cultivation was irreplaceable. Zhou Yan charged out. She unleashed a powerful move. She sliced out with her hand, and it was like a divine phoenix whipped its tail. The whole galaxy was dazzling with brilliant light, but it was still useless. Wu Haoyang was just standing there, as if he was the overlord of the heaven and earth, and every single attack would have no effect on him. Tai Binghe also threw out a punch, which became a bear of ice. Boom! The bear of ice passed through Wu Haoyang's body, and he was completely unharmed. Everyone was speechless. Was there really an invincible defense in this world? "Do you still want to try?" Wu Haoyang pointed at Ling Han. He knew that this was the man that was ranked number 1 on the recent leaderboard. At the same time, he could also be considered a rookie. However, so what if he was number 1? In his eyes, everyone else was trash. Naturally, Ling Han threw a punch, the force turning into a streak of light that shot towards Wu Haoyang. Pooh! This streak of light still surged through Wu Haoyang's body, but everyone exclaimed in slight surprise because the streak of light that Wu Haoyang had turned into actually wavered slightly as well. It worked! Ling Han released a battle cry, and charged towards Wu Haoyang. He threw a punch, but Wu Haoyang reacted this time, and retaliated with a punch of his own. Pang! In front of everyone's disbelieving eyes, Ling Han's fist and Wu Haoyang's fist actually crashed into each other. Ling Han could touch him, he could actually touch him. Tu Shi and the others were all overjoyed. Though it was not they who had done it, it still proved that Wu Haoyang was not absolutely invincible. Realization dawned on Ling Han. So, one who has tempered his body with the fundamental power of the Genesis world can hit you. Previously, he had only delivered force with his attacks, but had not landed any actual blows. That was why it had only had a slight effect on Wu Haoyang. However, Ling Han struck with his actual fist this time. The effect was completely different. A sliver of surprise appeared on Wu Haoyang's face as well. The counter for this cultivation technique of his was actually very simple. One only had to attack him with the fundamental power of the Genesis world. But what did this signify? Even a first-tier Heavenly Venerate could not wound him. Because this is an ability that the 7th-tier Heavenly Venerate of the Wu clan had paid a considerable price for and personally instilled for him. But here, a 9th Heaven Celestial King had actually landed a solid hit on him. Chapter 2734. 2734 Evenly Matched. 2734 Evenly Matched. Wu Haoyang was quite surprised. This was because his grandfather, that 7th-tier Heavenly Venerate, had actually personally bestowed on him such power that allowed him to be fearless against all powerful enemies below the level of 2nd-tier Heavenly Venerate. But now, a 9th Heaven Celestial King actually had the ability to pose a threat to him. I didn't expect that besides Lin Yuan, Xian Chihu, and myself, there would be a 4th person who mastered the fundamental power of the Genesis world before reaching the level of a 2nd-tier Heavenly Venerate, Wu Haoyang said, but his arrogance remained. If even Lin Yuan and Xian Chihu were people whom he wanted to surpass, then what would Ling Han be counted as? In a battle at the same level, Wu Haoyang was confident that he could crush any opponent. Come on, let me teach you what it means to be truly invincible. Wu Haoyang made a move and blasted a shot towards Ling Han. Ling Han was also filled with excitement. He had wanted to fight Wu Haoyang yesterday, but at that time, Wu Haoyang was battling against the veterans, and Ling Han felt it wasn't appropriate to make a move. Subsequently, he was also persuaded by Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable and the others not to, so he decided to postpone it. Now this fight was exactly what he wanted. He fearlessly exchanged blows with Wu Haoyang. Wu Haoyang used a Heavenly Venerate technique, blasting out a mass of flames which superseded the power of the regulations, such that even the regulations of fire itself might be burned to ashes. Ling Han immediately felt that his body was going through scorching heat and extreme pain. The power of the Heavenly Venerate technique was too great, especially when it was circulated and launched through the hands of a prodigy such as Wu Haoyang. It was totally the battle prowess of a first-tier Heavenly Venerate. Ling Han circulated the 5 elements lightning technique, and started exchanging blows with Wu Haoyang. This battle was akin to a spear fighting against a spear, both going all out by using their strongest attacks to defeat their opponent. Of course, such a battle was indeed fierce, and even if a first-tier Heavenly Venerate was to step in, it would be impossible to stop them without using any powerful techniques. After advancing into the 9th heaven, Ling Han's duration of channeling the Heavenly Venerate technique had been extended by a lot, while Wu Haoyang was at the same level as him, being equally talented, with almost the same duration of channeling the Heavenly Venerate technique. This kind of clash between the two was enough to last for an entire day. However, after fighting for about half a day, both of them frowned. They had to admit that their opponent was freakish enough to contend against themselves, but the one-day battle was too short for them to determine who was going to be the winner. However, both of them were arrogant and wanted to suppress one another. Naturally, neither one would stop, so they continued to fight. Tu Shi and the others felt rueful. The one who could restrain Wu Haoyang was actually a 9th Heaven Celestial King. To say nothing of them, even a first-tier Heavenly Venerate couldn't do anything to Wu Haoyang, but the latter was actually being restrained by Ling Han. Come to think of it, this was actually quite interesting. Time was still slowly ticking away. The hourglass was almost empty. Tu Shi and the others couldn't care less about watching the battle anymore. They retreated one after another, grabbed a chair, and sat down. Ling Han and Wu Haoyang gave a loud roar at the same time. While continuing to fight fiercely with one another, they dashed towards the last chair. Both have regarded this chair as the key point to determine the outcome, and whoever grabbed it first would be considered to have the upper hand in this contest. The speed of the two was so fast that they were already in front of the chair in the blink of an eye, but neither of them could sit down on it. Ling Han could hurt Wu Haoyang, and Wu Haoyang could hurt him too. Who would dare to risk having to sustain an attack to just sit down? Their attacks became fiercer and fiercer, and soon there were only 3 grains of sand left in the hourglass. Scram! Wu Haoyang snarled, and shot out a punch, setting off boundless raging energy. There was an aura of primal chaos descending as he pushed his battle prowess to the pinnacle. You scram! As Ling Han also punched out, the 9 transformations divine scroll and the 5 elements lightning technique exploded together also went all out. Pang! Both of their bodies trembled at the same time, and then they were sent flying one after another. There were 2 grains of sand left, but the 2 were still in midair. Could it be that these 2 outstanding prodigies were going to be eliminated one after another? That would be really funny. People outside were all thinking that depending on the situation, the 2 of them, Ling Han and Wu Haoyang, might not be able to make it back before the last grain of sand was exhausted. Moreover, even if they could come back in time, seeing that their battle prowess was so closely matched, they would still fight to suppress each other. Hence, no one could gain the upper hand. That would still be a stalemate. No one could win, and they would still be eliminated together. Who asked them to fight each other to the death? Xiao, the momentum of their retreat had been expended fully. They surged back and rushed towards the last chair. That's mine, Wu Haoyang roared. In your dreams. Ling Han sneered as his speed completely exploded. As the last grain of sand fell, today's contest came to an end, and those who had not grabbed a seat would be kicked out. Who could it be? Everyone's eyes widened as there was a flash of light, and there was already one more person standing in front of them. Wu Haoyang. What about Ling Han? There was no second flash of light to send out the second person. Could it be? One after another, they all looked at the projection of the Heavenly Venerate tool. Who else could it be sitting on the last chair except Ling Han? It was just that Ling Han was obviously uncomfortable as only the edge of his buttocks managed to touch the chair, and his sitting posture was indeed extremely awkward. But no matter how unsightly he appeared, he stayed and was qualified to continue in the competition, while Wu Haoyang was ruthlessly eliminated. Ah! Wu Haoyang roared, his eyes bursting with flames as he could not resign himself to the outcome. Obviously, he ought to be able to defeat all the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates with his strength, but now that he was eliminated in advance, how could he accept it? Ling Han! He roared angrily. Xiao, the group of 5 including Ling Han came out of the Heavenly Venerate tool. They were the winners, and would be able to continue with the competition tomorrow. Without saying another word, Wu Haoyang immediately rushed over to fight Ling Han again. Stop! The first-tier Heavenly Venerate here reprimanded as he stretched out his hand to grab him. Do you think you can discipline me? Wu Haoyang was extremely arrogant, and he didn't give that Heavenly Venerate any face at all. His body transformed into a blazing light, and he was impenetrable by any force, just aiming his attacks at Ling Han. That Heavenly Venerate was extremely angry, but he was only a first-tier Heavenly Venerate, so how could he do anything to the current Wu Haoyang? Just like everyone else, his moves were all useless, and he couldn't touch even a single strand of hair on Wu Haoyang's body. Wu Haoyang, you've gone too far. That Heavenly Venerate shouted in a deep voice, feeling great embarrassment at the same time he was a dignified Heavenly Venerate, after all. Gone too far? Wu Haoyang paused. Fine, I'll deal with you first. Let's see who else dares to stop me. He no longer attacked Ling Han, but rushed towards that Heavenly Venerate. This made everyone grit their teeth. You are too crazy. You even dare to make a move against a Heavenly Venerate. Impudence! That Heavenly Venerate finally became furious. He beckoned with his hand, and a Heavenly Venerate tool promptly fell into his palm. It was an ancient mirror. With a light exclamation, he aimed the ancient mirror at Wu Haoyang, and a beam of light shot out immediately. Wu Haoyang underestimated his opponent. He neither dodged nor avoided the shot at all, and was directly hit by the light, which caused him to fall down immediately, and he stumbled on his feet. A first-tier Heavenly Venerate couldn't hurt him, but that didn't mean that the same was true for a Heavenly Venerate tool. That Heavenly Venerate took advantage of the success to deliver the next move. He came up towards Wu Haoyang in a single stride, and swung the ancient mirror at him like a hammer. Pong! There was a muffled sound as Wu Haoyang was hit by this blow as well, and directly fell to the ground. This place suppressed the cultivation level. In fact, there was no difference in battle prowess between the first-tier Heavenly Venerate and Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate. The most would be that first-tier Heavenly Venerate was able to constantly channel a Heavenly Venerate technique, and would definitely win against all Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates in a long, drawn-out battle. However, Wu Haoyang originally would have nothing to fear. Who asked him to be so crazy? As a result, was hit by the Heavenly Venerate tool, bringing about his instantaneous defeat. Chapter 2735. 2735 Seizing the Alchemical Pill. 2735 Seizing the Alchemical Pill. The match will continue tomorrow, said the Heavenly Venerate. Everyone turned to look at Wu Haoyang, who was lying on the ground. Fortunately, this guy had been knocked unconscious, otherwise he would be making a lot of commotion right now. Everyone dispersed. People like Ling Han and the others also needed to make proper adjustments to deal with the next day's battle. When he got back to his own abode, Rain Emperor and the others came over one after another. Good job in eliminating Wu Haoyang. The large black dog was very excited. That guy is too arrogant. Unexpectedly, our little Han is not weak, either, and can actually hurt his body. Everyone has a weakness indeed. Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable nodded with a smile. If there hadn't been a Ling Han, then Wu Haoyang would have been absolutely invincible. However, Ling Han could actually restrain him. Conversely, although Ling Han's physique was like divine metal, he wasn't invincible in the face of Heavenly Venerable tier battle prowess. As long as Tu Shi and the others joined forces, the chances of Ling Han being outmatched would likely be very high. Wu Haoyang should have been extremely depressed. Why did the heavens allow one Ling Han to appear before him? At this point, little Han should be able to secure the victory. The large black dog smiled, and then instigated, "Little Han, are you going to follow Wu Haoyang's example, and beat up all the remaining 4 people tomorrow so that you alone can get the 7 death 7 explosions pills?" Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable immediately shook his head. Ling Han is not Wu Haoyang. It's just that his body is like divine metal, and he is not invincible. If he exhibits such thoughts, he will definitely be targeted. With the joint efforts of the 4 elites, there is a high chance that he will be defeated. Tu Shi, Qi Chongjun, Zhou Yan, and Tai Binghe, which one of them wasn't a prodigy capable of leading their generation? Fighting one-on-one, Ling Han could be fearless, while fighting one-on-2 would make it difficult for Ling Han to win, and he would be powerless to even fight back when fighting one-on-3. The large black dog couldn't help but feel it was a pity. He had always been very greedy. The day's time passed by quickly, and the tournament continued. Ling Han didn't see Wu Haoyang, and he had no idea whether this guy hadn't woken up yet or he felt ashamed, and couldn't face other people. Ling Han didn't care. His immediate goal was to get his hands on the 7 death 7 explosions pill. Upon entering the Heavenly Venerate tool, the competition quickly continued. 5 people, fighting for 4 positions. After a brief confrontation, a scuffle broke out immediately. Ling Han wasn't targeted, because he wasn't as invincible as Wu Haoyang, and he wasn't as aggressive as Wu Haoyang, so Tu Shi and the others were quite well behaved. After a day of battles, Tu Shi became the second rookie to be eliminated. He was wearing a very surly expression. In fact, it couldn't be said that his strength wasn't enough, but it was just that he was sent flying from the blows at that moment, and when he came running back, the sand in the hourglass had run out. Just like with Wu Haoyang the day before yesterday, it wasn't a matter of strength, but rather it was more a matter of luck. At present, there were still 4 people remaining. As long as one more got eliminated, this game would be over. Who would be the one? After resting for 1 day, the competition continued for the final day. After fighting with each other for a while, the 4 elites were divided into 2 groups fighting fierce battles. Ling Han was clashing with Qi Chongjun, while Zhou Yan was facing Tai Binghe. As long as one person among them got defeated, the remaining 3 would emerge victorious. However, with their abilities, there wouldn't be any problem to use a Heavenly Venerate technique for a day. In their current state, they were practically unparalleled in battle prowess, and no one could actually suppress the other. Hence, the day was almost over, yet the 4 of them were still engaged in a fierce battle. There was only slightly more than a dozen grains of sand left in the hourglass. The 4 of them were no longer trying to defeat their opponent, but were targeting the chairs as they kept on attacking. 9 grains of sand. Pang, pang, pang. The 4 people were attacking one another. It was no longer a fierce 2-on-2 battle, but a 4-person battle royale. Anyone whose battle prowess was slightly inferior would be sent flying, and he would naturally be eliminated. It had already come to this point. Who would want to fall at the last moment? The four of them continued attacking with their ultimate moves, and they absolutely didn't care who it was, but as long as one person among them was sent flying, that would do. 7 grains, 5 grains, and then 3 grains of sand. When there was only 1 grain of sand left, all of them roared, and blasted out with their respective ultimate moves using all their strength. Pang, a terrifying wave surged, and a figure was finally blown away, while the remaining 3 immediately seized their seats. The last grain of sand had fallen, and the game was over. In a flash of light, someone had been kicked out. It was Tai Binghe. In other words, the final winners were Ling Han, Zhou Yan, and Qi Chongjun. Shwa, shwa, shwa. The 3 of them also came out of the Heavenly Venerate tool after a while. Very good, very good. That Heavenly Venerate nodded with a smile. Congratulations to you for fighting your way out. This is your reward. Hopefully, you will be able to kill even more of Hysteria's army. He took out a pill bottle and handed it over to Ling Han first. Ling Han took it and said, "Thank you, my lord." That Heavenly Venerate smiled in response. He didn't dare to put on airs in front of Ling Han, as it might not take long for the other party to catch up and be on par with him in terms of battle prowess, and then to catch up to him in terms of cultivation level. Perhaps in another billion years, it would conversely be his turn to address the other party as Lord. Hence, now would be the time to create a good relationship. Why was Ling Han the first to be given the reward? Of course, careful considerations had been made. The second person to receive the reward was Zhou Yan. We will never forget the sacrifice that Senior Zhou has made for the Genesis world, that Heavenly Venerate said in a deep voice. Zhou Yan looked solemn as she took the pill bottle. I definitely won't bring disgrace upon my ancestors. The third one was of course Qi Chongjun, that Heavenly Venerate stretched out his hand and handed over the pill bottle. Shwa! At this moment, a ray of light suddenly flashed past at an astonishing speed. Who would have thought that someone would launch a sneak attack at this moment? Nevertheless, that Heavenly Venerate was the one who reacted the fastest, stretched his hand and released a palm strike in the direction of the light. However, when the palm strike reached the light, it continued to sweep out without causing effect. Wu Haoyang. Upon seeing this scene, everyone pronounced this name in their hearts. Sure enough, the flash of light transformed into the appearance of Wu Haoyang. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the pill bottle in the hand of that Heavenly Venerate. Gasp! This guy actually wanted to snatch the 7 Deaths 7 Explosions pill. Everyone was numb with shock. This guy was indeed too audacious. He even dared to seize something from the hands of a Heavenly Venerate. Moreover, this was the realm battlefield, and those who disobeyed the law would be killed immediately. It was just that this was too unexpected, and no one had been on guard. After Wu Haoyang flashed past that Heavenly Venerate in one move, he had already succeeded in 90%. When he once again swung his hand in a grabbing motion, the last 1 pill bottle fell into his hand. Still not satisfied, he then made a grab for Zhou Yan, intending to snatch another treasure pill. Humph! Ling Han made a move, and threw a punch out. I'll fight you again once I become a Pseudo-Heavenly Venerate. Wu Haoyang let out a long roar, turned around, and left without any intention to fight. Stop running! That Heavenly Venerate became angry, and quickly followed to give chase. If Wu Haoyang succeeded in running away, the former would absolutely be put to shame. My alchemical pill! Qi Chongjun also became furious, and chased after Wu Haoyang. It was just that Wu Haoyang's speed was obviously above theirs, or in other words, his physique was really too freakish, so as long as he was careful not to be hit by a Heavenly Venerate tool, he would be invincible here except when going against Ling Han. After a while, that Heavenly Venerate and Qi Chongjun came back, and their faces were livid. This matter wouldn't end so easily. This time Wu Haoyang was indeed too outrageous, so that Heavenly Venerate immediately reported to the higher authorities, requesting for the cooperation of the Wu clan to capture Wu Haoyang and bring him here to face punishment. Chapter 2736. 2736 Advancing to the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable Tier. 2736 Advancing to the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable Tier. The response from the Wu clan came very quickly, but it did not mention Wu Haoyang. Instead, it was a sliver of divine sense of their Grand Elder, Wu Jihong, that was transmitted over. Hee, the little kid truly likes to fool around. It contained just these few short words. This was a 7th-tier Heavenly Venerate having stuck a label on this matter. It was just fooling around. Since it was fooling around, what need was there to pursue it any further? Who would dare take the risk of offending a 7th-tier Heavenly Venerate to forcefully apprehend Wu Haoyang? Rules were meant to be broken, and a 7th-tier Heavenly Venerate would be qualified to break rules. As long as the other 7th-tier Heavenly Venerates did not speak up. He was the heaven and earth. He was he who made the rules, and he was justice. This matter could only be left unresolved. When Ling Han found this out, he was first surprised. No wonder Wu Haoyang dared to be so arrogant. Firstly, he indeed had the ability, and secondly, he had his clan backing him up. Having caused such great trouble, he actually could still go unpunished. This was really eye-opening for Ling Han. Ling Han only had this thought, and then did not further think on this matter. In any case, it was he that had the upper hand in the battle with Wu Haoyang. Even if anyone were to hate, it would be Wu Haoyang hating him. It was more important to improve his strength. Ling Han immediately went into seclusion. He was going to refine the 7 Deaths 7 Explosions pill. Otherwise, if Wu Haoyang succeeded in breaking through, and he had not, then based on Wu Haoyang's personality, he would definitely defeat Ling Han in public, and trample all over him. Ling Han ingested the 7 Deaths 7 Explosions pill, and began to refine the medicinal effects. There was not much reaction after just ingesting the alchemical pill, but when the medicinal effects spread out, and began to circulate through his body, Ling Han felt things get worse. The medicinal effects were extremely frightening. It was like there was a sharp dagger that was gouging at his body and soul, wanting to forcefully tear him into shreds. 7 Deaths 7 Explosions pill meant that he would have to go through 7 deadly calamities, 7 instances of his mind exploding violently. If he survived, only then would he gain a great improvement. Pa pa pa. Pieces of flesh fell from Ling Han's body. He had a physique of divine metal, but now it was completely useless. His flesh fell bit by bit, and he soon became a bloodied figure and skeleton. However, his skeleton was even sturdier, and was not destroyed by the medicinal effects. Glowing luster wrapped around him, and his heart was still encased in his ribs, beating strongly. Ling Han channeled the indestructible heaven scroll, and golden seals appeared, transforming into his flesh and blood again. A whole 3 days later, he had finally made it through. His cultivation level instantly began to soar wildly. A feeling of invincibility rose up in him. He wanted nothing more than to defeat all the elites of this world and stand alone, above all of them. He wanted to fight. 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 Ling Han's heart jolted. He had survived a deadly calamity, but had become violent. This was another trial. He hurriedly steadied his mind, and suppressed these violent urges with his strong determination and willpower. Another 3 days passed, and he survived it. However, the medicinal effects became violent again. His flesh and blood once again began to fall, and it felt as if his mind was about to be torn apart, causing him such agony that he wanted to scream loudly. This time, it was even harder to bear. Thankfully, Ling Han had previously experienced countless hardships. Though this was very hard to bear, it was still not enough to break past his limits. 3 days later, the medicinal effects became gentle, and Ling Han greeted another wave of mad increase of his cultivation level, but he became violent again quickly afterwards. After experiencing this kind of endless cycle 5 times, even with Ling Han's willpower, he was close to his limits. The 6th wave of violent medicinal effects arrived again. Crack, crack, crack. This time, cracks appeared even in his bones, which was extremely terrifying. He survived it with great difficulty. His cultivation level spiked, soaring all the way to peak stage 9th heaven. It had been mentioned that he was essentially a pseudo-heavenly venerate. It was just that others began from a complete 1, while he started from 0. 001. Thus, there was no need for him to take any other steps by this time. As a matter of natural course, he became a pseudo-heavenly venerate. Clang! Instantly, a reaction came from the heaven and earth. A heavenly tribulation was about to arrive. Ling Han did not fear the heavenly tribulation. By now, he had the physique of divine metal, so it was fine even if he were to sit, or even lie down, through the whole process of the heavenly tribulation, but the problem now was that the present occasion was slightly unsuitable. Under the medicinal effects, Ling Han became violent again, and when the heavenly tribulation descended and blasted him, it also caused his temperament, which he had calmed down with much difficulty, to become restless and irritable. A feeling of sadism rose up in him. He wanted to massacre the whole world. Withdraw! He aggressively blasted back at the heavenly tribulation, his black locks flying upwards and his eyes bright red, making him look like a demon. You want to control me? Impossible! Ling Han cried out. Veins popped on his forehead, but his gaze was regaining clarity. He had battled countless times throughout his life, and his willpower was as strong as iron and steel, so how could he fall here? 3 days later, Ling Han finally made it through. But the final wave of death and explosion assaulted again. Ling Han's bones were instantly shattered. He channeled the indestructible heaven scroll, forcefully putting his bones together, but when the medicinal effects unfurled, his bones shattered once more. He continuously repeated this process. He was really close to dying. Then, his mind became violent again. Another 3 days later, calm returned to Ling Han's expression. His eyes opened, his gaze clear. He had finally made it through. Ling Han sighed in relief. He wondered, if he were to be given another 7 death 7 explosions pill now, would he still take it? He could not be certain. Based on his yearning for strength, he would choose to ingest it, but when he thought back to the agony endured for more than a month previously, he felt a wariness of never wanting to encounter this kind of alchemical pill again. What is the point of feeling conflicted over such a nonsensical matter? There is no second 7 death 7 explosions pill. Ling Han shook his head. He cast his eyes inwards, and could see that after the celestial seed had gone through 9 transformations, it had become a tiny figure that looked very much like him. This figure sat cross-legged in his mind with the air of primal chaos circulating around it, looking austere and dignified. He once again tried to communicate with void particles, while the celestial seed figure communicated with the heaven and earth. There was no need for him to be boosted with heavenly venerable seals. He could touch void particles just by stretching out his hand, and they entered into his body and circulated, improving his body art. Realization dawned on Ling Han. No wonder one had to reach peak stage 9th heaven to be able to qualify to attempt to break through to the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier. That was because after the celestial seed went through 9 transformations, it would be considerably easier to communicate with the fundamental power of the Genesis world. Of course, Ling Han had long since been able to communicate with void particle, and had completed this process ahead of time. Thus, he only had to stretch out his hand. If this had been another peak stage 9th heaven celestial king, he might never be able to sense that unique power of the realm for his whole lifetime, what more the fundamental powers of the Genesis world. Similarly, Ling Han clearly could sense void particles, but could not sense the unique power of the flaming frost realm. He also could not sense the other 5 fundamental powers. Every type of power would have a repelling nature, obstructing the sensing of other powers. Thus, the higher the cultivation level, the harder it is to advance further. Ling Han began to understand. Heavenly venerable seals once again appeared in his mind, and the speed of his extraction of void particles instantly increased slightly. Now, he was finally a real pseudo-heavenly venerate. He no longer had to be so cautious in his extraction of void particles. Now that his cultivation level had reached the appropriate level, everything would come easily. Too bad. My battle prowess has not welcomed a revolutionary change. Ling Han shook his head. Breaking through to the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier had only unlocked the upper limits for his further improvement of body art, and just like other 9th heaven celestial kings that had broken through to the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier, he could only begin cultivating body art, but to really exhibit this advance in the increase of battle prowess, that would come much, much later. Primarily, his advancement came from the 7 death 7 explosions pill. As for himself, that would need accumulated power over time. However, this should be enough to fight a heavenly venerate. Ling Han smiled because he could already use heavenly venerate techniques without limits at present, and there were no longer any time restrictions. Ling Han, get out here and fight me. Outside, Wu Haoyang's voice rang out once more. Chapter 2737 2737 A Great Battle Without Comparison. 2737 A Great Battle Without Comparison. Wu Haoyang was truly like a lingering ghost. Pang, pang, pang. The sounds of battle could be heard all the way over here. Ling Han frowned, and immediately rushed out. The Rain Emperor, the Empress, the Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable, and the large black dog were all trying to stop Wu Haoyang, but faced with his physique, none of them could achieve this. Hence, Wu Haoyang forged his way all the way here, and no one could stop him. Ling Han. When he spotted Ling Han, Wu Haoyang's eyes immediately lit up, his fighting spirit soaring. Humph! Ling Han ignored him completely, directly rushing forwards and attacking. Touching his family and friends was his peeve. No one could touch them. Wu Haoyang naturally was unafraid, and similarly brandished his fists and clashed with Ling Han. By now, there were no longer any 9 ribbons of iridescent light wrapped around him, which meant that he, like Ling Han, had also advanced to the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier. Boom! 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 The 2 great prodigies immediately took their battle to the skies, and then unleashed their respective battle prowess. They were both clashing with Heavenly Venerate techniques. After advancing to the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier, they both possessed an ability that true Heavenly Venerates possessed, the unrestricted use of a Heavenly Venerate technique. Thus, though the increase to their standard battle prowess was not great, if the Heavenly Venerate techniques were accounted for as well, they would be too terrifying. The commotion caused by this battle was very loud, drawing many people out to check what was going on. When they discovered that Ling Han and Wu Haoyang were battling intensely, everyone's expression changed. However, both of them had advanced, setting foot in the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier at the same time, and the increase in their strength was more or less equal. Thus, like during the previous battle in the Heavenly Venerate tool, they were still in a situation wherein neither could defeat or subdue the other. This time, however, Ling Han was unwilling to stop. He did not fear being challenged, but Wu Haoyang had actually fought his way to his home, and almost wounded the Empress and the others. This was something he could not accept. He was going to crush this bastard. The battle continued, and even the 2 Heavenly Venerates that were standing by here had no plans on interfering to stop them, because it was useless even if they did. They could not stop the duo at all. The present Ling Han and Wu Haoyang were no longer inferior to true Heavenly Venerates. Furthermore, Wu Haoyang was so strange. If he turned around to wound them instead, just how embarrassing would that be? 1 day, 2 days, 10 days, a month, and the 2 great prodigies continued their battle incessantly. The battle was constantly and incredibly intense. Neither of them made any mention of stopping. They both had a reason and determination to defeat the other completely. The people beneath them were all astounded. They were 2 Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates, but had maintained Heavenly Venerable tier battle prowess for a month straight. Just how terrifying was this? Tu Shi, Tai Binghe, and the other super rookies could only shake their heads. It seemed like they could only contend for glory with these 2 after they had become second-tier Heavenly Venerates. They had no choice but to submit. When they had fought until the 2nd month, a sharp scream suddenly interrupted their peace. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! Hysteria's troops launched an assault again. Everyone hurriedly made their preparations. Those that should be on the city wall went upwards, and those that should not stayed on the defense below, preparing to deal with those that escaped through the net. But Ling Han was still fighting with Wu Haoyang. By now, no one else existed in their eyes. All they could see was each other. Boom! Hysteria's troops had already arrived. The city wall immediately glowed, blasting out an attack. By itself, this was a great weapon. Group after group of ground troops collapsed, and even the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates could not withstand a single blast. However, there would be those that managed to escape through their net and charged over to this side of the wall. Some fell into the city, while some charged into the skies, launching an offensive at Ling Han and Wu Haoyang. After being attacked, Ling Han awoke from the state of violent fighting spirit he had sunk into. His eyes swept over his surroundings, and saw the troops that were tightly packed beneath him. They covered mountains and plains, and went as far as the eye could see. He had changed his mind. Wu Haoyang, we will fight later. Xiao. He descended, and rushed into Hysteria's troops. Throwing out both fists, he began a massacre. Stop! Wu Haoyang immediately set off in pursuit. The 2 of them had fallen into Hysteria's troops outside the city at the same time. It was like they were lambs that had mistakenly wandered into a pack of wolves. Immediately, they were surrounded and attacked. Scram! Wu Haoyang had fallen behind by a step, yet he was at least several dozen kilometers away from Ling Han, and just how many troops of hysteria lay across this distance? He roared furiously, and charged towards Ling Han. Pang pang pang! Using both fists, he destroyed all the troops of hysteria that blocked his way one after another. Ling Han's speed was not low, either. His left hand used the 5 elements lightning technique, while his right hand held the divine demon sword, which was boosted with the 9 transformations divine scroll. He was attacking even more fiercely. These weren't lambs that had fallen into a pack of wolves, but rather 2 ferocious lions that had pounced into a flock of sheep. It would only be they that would be causing a massacre. They were really too strong. Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates actually weren't even worthy of taking a strike head-on from them. This was natural. In the first place, their battle prowess was capable of sweeping aside 99% of Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates, and now, further boosted with Heavenly Venerate techniques, they would definitely be even more awesome. Wang! Waves of light from the city wall surged over. Instantly, group after group of Hysteria's troops felt like they were wheat being harvested. Furthermore, this light wave did not differentiate between enemy and friend. Both Ling Han and Wu Haoyang were within attack range. Wu Haoyang turned into light, and as the wave of light surged past, it did not have any effect on him. Ling Han was not much inferior. He channeled the indestructible heaven scroll, and multiple golden seals formed on his body, allowing him to withstand this attack. The wave of light that was capable of insta-killing Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates did not cause the slightest bit of damage to the 2 of them. Ling Han let out a battle cry, and continued his massacre. The divine demon sword delivered sword chi that was several thousands of meters long. This destructive power was not much weaker than the city light. With a single sweep of his sword, at least a dozen monsters were sliced in half. It was only over a dozen because these monsters were too massive. If they were only the size of a normal human being, a single strike would kill several hundred to several thousand of them. Even so, Ling Han had also turned into a god of death. Competing in the number of kills? Wu Haoyang looked defiant. I will not lose to you in anything. He was still chasing after Ling Han, but his focus was now placed on his enemy kills, wanting to compete with Ling Han in this manner. Both of them were so crazy, yet it caused the people who were on the city wall to be dumbfounded. Even the 2 great heavenly venerates couldn't help but twitch. If it had been them in the duo's place, their battle prowess would not be inferior to that of Ling Han or Wu Haoyang, but their defense would definitely be outmatched. Very soon, they would be attacked so hard that they would have no choice but to flee back behind the city wall. Yet Ling Han and Wu Haoyang both possessed above-average defense, which was completely capable of withstanding the siege of Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates, accomplishing battle merits that even Heavenly Venerates could only stare at. 7 days later, the army retreated. Ling Han, come and fight me. Wu Haoyang was again howling, charging towards Ling Han. Ling Han naturally would not retreat. Turning around, he began to battle Wu Haoyang once more. Crazy, they had both really gone crazy. The people in the city were all numb with shock. They had endured such a great battle, and all of them felt weary, both mentally and physically, desperately wanting a good rest. But Ling Han and Wu Haoyang had previously been fighting right in the depths of the enemy troops, so they would definitely be even more tired, yet now they were actually fighting with each other again. How could everyone accept that? These 2 freaks. However, what was even more shocking was the fact that when the recent leaderboard was once again updated 11 days later, Wu Haoyang had directly charged his way up the recent leaderboard. In a single battle, he had climbed into the recent leaderboard. It should be known that this was adding up all the battle merits over a time span of 1 million years. Wu Haoyang was ranked at the 362nd place, having killed 986 Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates and 38,427 Ninth Heaven Celestial Kings. What was even more terrifying was Ling Han. He naturally was still number 1, but the number of Pseudo-Heavenly Venerates he had killed soared past 13,000, and as many as over 50,000 Ninth Heaven Celestial Kings had perished in his hands. Chapter 2738. 2,738 chances of close to zero. 2,738 chances of close to zero. Setting aside how Ling Han had directly climbed onto the recent leaderboard on his first attempt, either of their battle merits could be considered a miracle. To have killed 1,000 to 2,000 pseudo-heavenly venerates in a single battle, who could believe that? But it couldn't be helped. The two of them were incredibly extraordinary, and had mastered directly the fundamental power of the Genesis world. 4 pseudo-heavenly venerates, this was a crushing advantage, and added with super strong defense for one, while the other could not be wounded by any force, they were both immortal monsters, and that was what had led to them having accomplished such a magnificent feat. Perhaps there would be no one that could surpass the battle merits that they had accumulated even after another several hundred epochs. In the past, why hadn't Lin Yuan and Xian Qihu been so powerful? That was very simple. At the time, they had not charged out to kill enemies when the enemy troops were attacking the city, so how could their enemy kill rate be compared to that of Ling Han and Wu Haoyang? Ling Han and Wu Haoyang were still fighting. The two of them were now truly angered by their battle, and they were determined to see who was the stronger between the two of them, and who the victor of their battle would be. At the very end, everyone had gotten accustomed to it. A great many people were already impatient from watching, and couldn't be bothered to pay any more attention. After all, it was their own cultivation that was the most important. What was the use of watching the excitement? However, there were still a lot of spectators. Watching the clash between two great prodigies would definitely give one a certain level of appreciation. This battle really had no end. They both were the type that was determined to win and be the best. Moreover, the stronger their opponent was, the more they wanted to defeat him. 10 years, 100 years. Time passed so swiftly. In this period, Hysteria even launched a few more assaults, yet this still couldn't stop them. However, when the enemy troops attacked, the two of them would first charge to attack Hysteria's troops by tacit agreement. 1,000 years passed, and the recent leaderboard was updated again. Not only was Ling Han's position as the first place unmovable, even his ranking on the recent leaderboard had leaped a great distance forwards. Wu Haoyang's rank had directly come to 7th, and it was certain that he would already be 2nd after the next update. After battling another 300 years, they finally stopped, but they did not go their separate ways. Instead, they sat down on the sidelines, digesting the experience that they had accumulated throughout the battle. Now that the battle had come so far, they both knew that there was no way they could defeat their opponent with their present strength. Hence, they could only create even stronger ultimate moves, and only then would they be able to win the upper hand, or even overwhelm their opponent completely. Over a dozen years later, Ling Han's eyes suddenly snapped open. He leaped up, and Wu Haoyang did the same on the other side as well. The two of them were really too genius, and they were incredibly close as well. The battle resumed. Boom, boom, boom. They clashed intensely. This time their respective battle prowess had increased slightly, and they were fighting even more manically, but it was still hard to distinguish who was stronger between the two of them. They fought for another 200-odd years, and then stopped again. They sat down and mulled over their gains achieved in this battle. Over a dozen years later, they battled again. With such continuous pausing and battling then pausing, a new millennium soon came. After the recent leaderboard was updated again, Wu Haoyang was ranked 2nd, as expected. However, the gap between his and Ling Han's battle merits had become even wider. It could not be helped. Ling Han had a heavenly venerate tool, so his destructive power was a considerable number of times greater than Wu Haoyang's. No one would have expected that this was actually only the beginning of Ling Han and Wu Haoyang's madness. Millennia passed one after another, and their positions on the recent leaderboard could be shaken by no one. Wu Haoyang had also very quickly climbed onto the general leaderboard, and began to advance fiercely ahead. In the blink of an eye, 70,000 years had passed. Ling Han had already reached the 34th place on the general leaderboard, and Wu Haoyang had reached the 99th. The battle merits that the two of them had accomplished together were even more astounding than those of Xian Qihu and Lin Yuan. It was possible that their results could never be surpassed. At this time, they finally stopped their battle. They both knew that it was impossible to subdue the other while at the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier. Hence, they each wanted to break through to the Heavenly Venerable tier faster than the other, or become a 2nd-tier Heavenly Venerate or 3rd-tier Heavenly Venerate. Though they were reluctant, they each had no choice but to recognize the other as a strong rival, and having this kind of opponent would motivate them to improve even faster. After returning to his abode, Ling Han immediately went into a long period of seclusion. He wanted to completely digest the appreciation that had been brought through this extensive battle. At the same time, he wanted to find a way to defeat Wu Haoyang. If he took the normal path, step after step, there was no way that he could surpass Wu Haoyang, because Wu Haoyang was completely not inferior to him in natural talent and genius at all. In fact, the latter even had a grandfather that was a 7th-tier heavenly venerate, and this was something that Ling Han could not match. Hence, if Ling Han wanted to defeat Wu Haoyang, he would need to find some other way. Alternatively, Ling Han could surpass Wu Haoyang in terms of cultivation speed. This was really impossible, however. Wasn't trying to compete with the accumulation of resources and wealth of a 7th-tier heavenly venerated joke. Otherwise, Ling Han had to think of some way to make himself even stronger within the same cultivation level. What to do now? Actually, Ling Han had long since had this idea. However, firstly, his cultivation level had not reached the appropriate level, and secondly, he had not encountered powerful opponents, so he had only had a vague idea previously. Ling Han set his eye on the countless realms of the Genesis world. He naturally was not planning to devour these realms, but rather wanted to comprehend the unique powers of these realms one after another, then fuse them together, and become the strongest first-tier heavenly venerate. This was easy to say, but it was definitely impossible that he was the only one to come up with this idea throughout such extensive history. Why had there never been anyone who had succeeded before? Was it because it was too difficult, or was it that they did not know where to begin, or was it just impossible? After Ling Han had digested the benefits brought by this extensive battle, he went to meet the karmic life Heavenly Venerable, and they discussed the possibility of him achieving such a feat. However, the karmic life Heavenly Venerable did not know, either. He came from the celestial realm. Previously, he had only known that there had been another realm called the foreign realm. He had not thought about this aspect at all. It seemed like Ling Han would have to ask for guidance from such mighty figures like Zhou Hang, Lin Xiaoyang, or even Lin Luo to be able to get his answers. Still, could he just simply meet with such powerful figures? Ling Han did the next best thing. He took a period of leave, and returned to the world's paramount martial academy. He was going to find Wally. This guy's knowledge base was extremely vast, and he also possessed super strong calculation, analysis, and deduction ability. Perhaps it would give Ling Han an unexpected surprise. Several decades later, Ling Han returned to the world's paramount martial academy. Only several thousand years had passed. To the martial academy, it was just like yesterday. Nothing had changed at all. Ling Han barged through the formation and into the martial academy. Very soon, he found Wally. This guy was earnestly refining divine metal. This was his method of cultivation. A thought suddenly came to Ling Han. Could it be possible that there would come a day that Wally's body would become as tough and hard as a heavenly venerate tool? Wally was the type to keep clear accounts even with his own brother. If Ling Han wanted to make a request of Wally, he naturally had to pay accordingly. For this, Ling Han had given Wally over 100 pieces of divine metal. A considerable number of them were on credit. At present, there was no way Ling Han could produce so many pieces of divine metal, and his credibility was not too bad, or rather it could be said that he was a major client, so Wally allowed him to owe the rest on credit. Wally began his calculations. The light on his body dimmed and brightened continuously, but this calculation actually continued for a whole 110,000 years. As Ling Han waited, he continued cultivating. If it were not for the fact that Wally was glowing and dimming in intervals, he would wonder if the latter had already died. The difficulty level is extremely high, but there is still 7% of 100 trillionth chance of success, Wally finally said. 7% of 100 trillionth chance of success. Ling Han did not know how Wally had calculated this chance of success, but he knew this was a probability that was boundlessly close to zero. No wonder no one had ever succeeded before in history. Chapter 2739. 2739 Requesting Leave. 2739 Requesting Leave. Wally pondered for a moment before saying, however, after considering the fact that you've already interacted with void particle energy, due to the repulsion of this void particle energy, the chance of success will further decrease by fourfold. Ling Han rolled his eyes in an exaggerated manner. Did this not imply a chance of less than 1 in 100 trillion? This was infinitesimally close to zero. Was this a completely impossible task? Ling Han fell deep in thought. His future was indeed bright, and as long as he progressed normally, he would eventually become the most powerful first-tier heavenly venerate. Only after advancing to the second tier would his advantage disappear. For people to become a heavenly venerate, which of them wasn't a supreme prodigy? Thus, if one attempted to defeat such a foe, that would be an extremely difficult task. Now Ling Han possessed 3 heavenly venerate techniques, and he had more so been tempered by void particle energy. Thus, his battle prowess was enough to crush all pseudo-heavenly venerates. In fact, he wouldn't be at a disadvantage even against first-tier heavenly venerates. However, such an advantage would only exist while he remained at the first tier. After advancing to the second tier, he would become just like everyone else. He would have to take things one step at a time. Can I master 6 different fundamental powers of the Genesis world first? And only master the unique power of the dimension after that? Ling Han asked Wally. If this were possible, he could extend his advantage all the way until he became a 6th-tier heavenly venerate. After advancing to the 7th tier, how many more opponents would he have? This number could definitely be counted on one hand, or perhaps 2 hands. Thus, what would it matter if their battle prowess became the same? Wally shook his head, and replied, after becoming a heavenly venerate, it's very difficult to turn back around to comprehend the fundamental power of the world. Even if you comprehend only one more, it will still render it impossible for you to comprehend the unique and fundamental power of this dimension. The 6th tier will be your limit. Then that's meaningless. To be invincible before the 7th tier, yet be unable to reach the 7th tier forever? Won't I be screwed? If it were someone else, would the lure of reaching the 6th tier not be enticing and freakish enough? However, Ling Han's goal had always been the 7th tier. He wanted to become the strongest. In other words, if I want to become invincible, my only choice is to gamble with that 1 in 100 trillion chance? Ling Han said with a frown. It's a chance smaller than 1 in 100 trillion, Wally corrected. Ling Han looked Wally in the eyes. Could he not be so pedantic at such a moment? All right. Ling Han suddenly discovered a burst of confidence. Even though his chances were microscopic, he would still give it a shot. Before this, possessing the unique power of a dimension was always a weakness. After all, just how powerful were he, Wu Haoyang, Lin Yolian, and Xian Chihu? They could easily crush other pseudo-heavenly venerates with a wave of their hands. This was for no other reason than having experienced tempering from void particles or other fundamental powers of Genesis worlds. After advancing to the first tier, they could still maintain or even extend this advantage. However, what if one could possess the power of 2 dimensions? Or even 3? Or 10? Or 100? At that time, would one still lose to those who had been tempered by void particle energy? If the quality was inferior, one could make up for it with quantity. In some sense, this would be akin to advancing to the 8th tier, 9th tier, or 10th tier. After discussing some finer details with Wally, Ling Han left the martial academy. He had initially wanted to deal with some old animosities and drag out the Imperial Void Celestial King and his son to give them a healthy beating. However, he couldn't find the 2 of them, and it appeared as if they had gone to the realm battlefield. However, Ling Han didn't recall seeing them in the first levels. Perhaps the Imperial Void Celestial King had already become a heavenly venerate. This wasn't impossible. After all, the Imperial Void Celestial King was no less talented than the Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable. All he lacked was some rare opportunities, and it was because of this that he had been unable to take that vital step. Even while in the celestial realm, he had already been very close to advancing to the Heavenly Venerable tier. After arriving in this transcendent dimension, it would be extremely normal for him to advance in leaps and bounds. So be it if he advanced. In Ling Han's eyes, first-tier heavenly venerates were only so. He could easily rival them. Meanwhile, if he also became a first-tier heavenly venerate, his advantage provided by the void particle energy would allow him to crush other first-tier heavenly venerates as if they were his playthings. After several more decades spent on travel, Ling Han finally returned to the realm battlefield. Ling Han discussed his plans with the Empress. After all, no one had ever succeeded on this path before. In fact, this was a path with no destination. Thus, he needed to discuss it with his wife. Bewitching Maiden Row and the others also joined this discussion, and the women all had their own opinions. Some were of the opinion that Ling Han didn't need to push himself so hard. Even if he slowed down and took things one step at a time, he would still eventually become the strongest heavenly veneration of the strongest. However, if he truly chose this path, he would very likely waste countless years of time. Meanwhile, the Empress resolutely supported Ling Han. In fact, she desired to accompany him and also take this path to become the most powerful first-tier heavenly venerate. After giving this some more thought, Ling Han ultimately decided to follow his heart. Otherwise, he would definitely have regrets. He would be left to ponder just how powerful he could have become if he had insisted on following this path. After making a decision, Ling Han could no longer be swayed. He went to the Celestial Administration to request leave. Generally speaking, everyone who became a pseudo-heavenly venerate would have to come here and volunteer their strength to resist hysteria. This wasn't the responsibility of so-and-so, but rather the responsibility of everyone. Thus, Ling Han's request for indefinite leave should have been impossible to approve. However, because his contributions were far too dazzling, had already charged into the general leaderboard, with his contributions being hundreds or even thousands of times greater than those of others, what harm would it do to grant him some leave? Thus, the two heavenly venerates responsible for this area passed on Ling Han's request for leave to the higher-ups. The reply was swift: request denied. This rejection was given by a higher-up in the 4th level. Apparently, this was a person with the surname He. His words were as follows: if one can enjoy special treatment in this place, then perhaps a person with great contributions can even flee in the face of battle? After hearing these words, Ling Han immediately guessed the identity of this person. This person was definitely He Yufeng's father. Fuck! How incredibly petty! Ling Han silently clenched his fists. However, without obtaining permission, he naturally couldn't leave the realm battlefield for extended periods of time. After all, if everyone became so relaxed and uncaring, how could they still resist hysteria? Thus, in the realm battlefield, discipline reigned above all else. Everyone had to obey orders. If Ling Han disregarded this rejection and chose to leave anyway, he would never need to return to this place. If he dared to return, he would definitely be captured and perhaps even executed on the spot. He would be regarded as a deserter. What should I do? Just as Ling Han was anxiously pondering over this, another order quickly arrived. This was an order from another higher-up, and the person who came to deliver it was Lin Piaoxue. Whose order was this? Lin Luo's, a 7th-tier heavenly venerate. His opinion was that Ling Han was a peerless prodigy who could potentially advance to the 7th tier in the future, which would allow him to change the tides of battle. Such a person should therefore be given more freedom, and not be weighed down by rigid rules and regulations. Just like that, the two heavenly venerates in the Celestial Administration quickly approved Ling Han's request for indefinite leave. Just like Wu Jihong's words had reduced Wu Haoyang's breaking of the rules to nothing more than causing a ruckus, Lin Luo's words also possessed such power. 7th-tier heavenly venerates were the most powerful in this world. Thank you, Miss Lin, Ling Han said to Lin Piaoxue as he clasped his hands. She had helped him immensely. Lin Piaoxue smiled faintly, and said, "You're the second person to cause my grandfather to speak and bend the rules." Ling Han's interest was piqued, and he asked, "Who was the first?" "My auntie," Lin Piaoxue replied casually. Lin Yuan, the princess of the Lin clan. She was the most prodigious member of their clan, and she enjoyed an equal standing with Xian Qihu. She was regarded as someone who had the greatest chance to reach the 7th tier. Ling Han nodded, saying, "I definitely won't disappoint Lord Lin." Chapter 2740. 2740 Experiencing the Power of a Dimension. 2740 Experiencing the Power of a Dimension. Ling Han set off, accompanied by the Empress and the others. He planned to invite the Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable, the large black dog, and the Rain Emperor as well. If they managed to succeed, they would become the most powerful, whether that was in the 1st tier, the 6th tier, or the 7th tier. It was anyone's guess whether they would succeed or not, but it was at least worth a try. However, it was a shame that only the Empress' request for leave was approved. She was his wife, so she could enjoy such a benefit. However, this was not the case for the others. The rules couldn't be bent again and again. After all, Ling Han wasn't a 7th-tier heavenly venerate. Ling Han sighed with emotion. Where had Hunyou gone? How nice it would have been to go together, no? She's most likely on the 5th level, the Empress said. Ling Han nodded in agreement. Hunyou had been led away by a 4th-tier heavenly venerate, so it was very likely that she was cultivating in the battlefield of the 5th level. She was definitely cultivating, as sending her into battle against Hysteria's army in that level would be no different than sending her to her death. We'll look for her when we return. The two of them held hands as they left. Meanwhile, the others all remained in the celestial guest residence due to the limitations of their cultivation level. They strolled casually, and it was as if they were a divine couple. If Hysteria didn't exist, how nice would it be for us to find a quiet place to settle? The Empress suddenly said with emotion. She had battled against Hysteria's army for many years, witnessing her fair share of blood and death. At this moment, she couldn't help but make such a remark. After we defeat Hysteria, we'll look for a quiet place to settle and have a bunch of children together, Ling Han said with a smile. There was a glimmer in the Empress' beautiful eyes as she lightly bit her bottom lip. She was indescribably beautiful. Ling Han was instantly seduced by her, and he immediately pulled her into the celestial guest residence. In any case, they had heaps of time to spare, so it wouldn't hurt to make some love. After journeying for more than 300 years, Ling Han and the Empress finally arrived at the border between the Flaming Frost Realm and another dimension. This was the Profound Negative Realm, a high-level dimension. There was no more battle here. However, different dimensions would repel each other, so even though there was no danger from other people here, there would definitely be dangers posed by nature. Bursts of chaotic air currents hammered down, flaunting the regulation transcending might of heaven and earth. Back when the celestial realm had collided with the foreign realm, a small world had been created. When this small world was eventually obliterated, the energy shockwaves that it unleashed caused even Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu to suffer wounds when he traversed through it. This was a clear sign of heaven and earth's might. Why don't you enter the celestial guest residence as well? I'll take us through this area, Ling Han said. The Empress nodded and entered the celestial guest residence. She didn't act stubbornly. Ling Han channeled the indestructible heaven scroll, causing golden symbols to instantly pulsate all over his body, forming a golden bell around him. He then strode forward, charging headfirst into the currents of chaos. Boom! A devastating power surged over, causing the golden bell around Ling Han to shudder violently. It was as if the golden bell were about to shatter at any moment. He hurriedly hastened his steps as visible fractures appeared on the surface of the golden bell. After just a few minutes, these fractures had already become cracks that allowed wisps of chaotic energy to barge inside. Ling Han hurriedly channeled the indestructible heaven scroll with his full strength, repairing these cracks with great difficulty. This was utterly terrifying. While channeling the indestructible heaven scroll, his defense could rival that of a first-tier heavenly venerate. He gritted his teeth as he continued to endure the barrage of attacks. However, the further he ventured into this area, the more devastating the burst of chaotic air currents became. The symbols on the golden bell continued to dim, while Ling Han continued to forcefully inject his power to repair the bell, allowing the symbols to light up again. This was truly far too difficult. Ling Han's stamina was vast, yet he couldn't help but pant from time to time by now. He felt the urge to lie down and sleep for several years. One had to realize that he hadn't felt so exhausted even after battling against Wu Haoyang for tens of thousands of years. He spat blood, and veins bulged all over his body. However, he still continued to channel the indestructible heaven scroll no matter the cost. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a simple matter of him facing perilous danger. The celestial guest residence would be immediately crushed, bringing death to the women inside. For the sake of his lovers, Ling Han mustered an indomitable fighting spirit. It was a bitter battle, yet he continued to withstand and push forward, with his steps becoming quicker and quicker. After an entire day, Ling Han finally made his way out of the danger zone. Pang! He instantly collapsed to the ground. He felt as if his bones were all crushed, and it was as if his body had been drained of all energy. Only after lying down for 10 years did Ling Han finally pick himself back up. He felt like he had recovered 10% of his energy. He started to extract void particle energy. After another 3 years, he finally recovered 80% of his energy. He didn't sit around any longer, choosing to set off instead. the Empress also came back out, and the two of them started to investigate this heaven and earth. The spiritual chi in this dimension was weaker than that of the flaming frost realm, though it was still extremely rich and abundant. After all, this was a high-level dimension that was still countless times more powerful than the celestial realm. The two of them set off to look for a giant volcano. They desired to comprehend the unique power of this world, so the closer to the core of the world they were, the easier this would be. However, journeying to the core of the world was no easy task. According to Wally, they could reach the core of the world after finding a giant volcano and entering via its crater. After several months, the two of them found a giant volcano, which they immediately entered. Funnily, they came across a group of adventurers on their way, and these people actively warned them about the grave dangers of this area, most likely because of the Empress' beauty. When they saw Ling Han and the Empress directly leap into the crater of the volcano, their eyes almost bulged out of their heads. After looking around for a while, Ling Han and the Empress shook their heads. The magma in this area was extremely high in temperature, yet it would still struggle to melt divine metal. Such a task would take it countless years. Moreover, it was very shallow in depth, and it wasn't long before they reached the bottom. It was naturally impossible to reach the core of the world here. Ling Han and the Empress exited the volcano and continued their search. Of course, they didn't forget to cultivate while embarking on this expedition. Finally, after 700 years, they found a supervolcano. According to the legends of the profound negative realm, this was a definite forbidden land. Even celestial kings would be forced to stop in their tracks. However, Ling Han was fearless. After many years of recultivation, the Empress had also largely mastered the regulations of this realm. She could once again wield a battle prowess at the 9th heaven. They entered the volcano, and were immediately greeted by high temperatures. The Empress immediately let out an astonished yelp. The temperature here was far too high. Ling Han drew her into the celestial guest residence, and continued to venture on alone. This volcano was surprisingly deep, and Ling Han still had yet to reach the bottom after descending for 10 days. At this moment, the magma around him had already become a dull red. Its destructive power was immense, and Ling Han had no option but to channel the indestructible heaven scroll to resist its power. After descending for 3 years, Ling Han finally reached the bottom. There was no more magma here. Instead, he was surrounded by chunks of strange stone. Before him was an expanse of void, in the center of which hovered an 18-colored orb that radiated with an indescribable might. This was something that couldn't be approached and couldn't be touched. It was the core of the dimension. In fact, the might of heaven and earth was profound. However, limited by the regulations, only a small portion of this might could be unleashed. If anyone dared to touch the core of the dimension, however, they would suffer the full wrath of heaven and earth. That would be incredibly dangerous. 7th-tier heavenly venerates had the right to touch the cores of dimensions. In fact, they could even destroy these cores of dimensions. However, Ling Han certainly couldn't achieve this. He didn't dare to approach the core of the dimension at all, keeping his distance. If he walked any closer, he would be shattered into smithereens by the overwhelming power that the core possessed. Meanwhile, the Empress had also exited the celestial guest residence, and was sitting even further away from the core. The two of them started to comprehend the power of the dimension, grasping the unique power of the profound negative realm. If a 9th heaven celestial king wanted to advance to the Pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier, the first step would be to comprehend the unique power of the dimension. However, how many people could succeed? This was far, far too difficult. Thus, even with the Empress and Ling Han's prodigious talent, they were still unable to make any progress in the short term. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.